And good morning. It is a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. It is a very special edition of Glenn Clark Radio, as it is our annual College Lacrosse Preview, starting very early this morning. Glenn Clark alongside Patrick Stevens, Mr. Discourse himself, D1S Course, and of course the Washington Post. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am well. Annual, except for the year that we skipped.
Well, yes, unfortunately, that was out of our hands at that point, but it's good to be back doing it, and looking forward to chatting with the area's Division I men's lacrosse coaches this morning. Coming up in a bit, we're going to chat with Navy coach Joe Amplo. Loyola's Charley Toomey will join us. UMBC's Ryan Moran, Maryland's John Tillman, and Johns Hopkins' Peter Milliman will all check in with us throughout the course of the morning. So lots to do on the show today, but we start early because everybody's got practice. They got things going on. There are actual games being played this week, Patrick, for some of these coaches. Not this one, but a couple of the others. Have games that are real, that they count as soon as this week. We'll talk about that as the day goes on. Our first coach on the hot seat today is the head coach of the Towson Tigers. He is, of course, Shawn Nadelen, and he joins us first here in our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you as always. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
Absolutely. Good morning, gentlemen. Always excited to talk lacrosse.
Yeah, of course, it's like 20 degrees outside, so you know it's time. It's time for us to start talking some
Spring
lacrosse.
is in the air.
That's the way it goes. Sure. Hey, Coach, great to catch up with you. Let me go back, if I could, to a year ago. You had so many close games that didn't go your way last season, right? 5 1 or 2 goal games. How much do you look at that and say, that's probably the biggest difference in why you guys fell short of what we know the goals and the standard is at Towson? And what is the difference this season for you guys to get over the hump in those games in particular?
Yeah, they were great learning experiences. Obviously some of them didn't go our way, but being in close games helps you understand what it takes to win those games and then what it takes to lose those games. And we were a pretty inexperienced group last year, so returning quite a few of those guys that have been in those moments, been in those games, understanding how to manage the course of the game a little bit better, a little bit smarter, should put us in better position this year. Our competition is going to be strong again, so we're going to be in tough games, so expecting a lot of close ones. So again, hoping that experience of the tight ones last year put us in position to be better off with the result.
Shawn, on the subject of experience, obviously you guys are like a lot of folks where you have the option of having guys back for a 5th year if they wanted to come back. And Kobe Smith is one of those guys that stands out that's about as experienced as anybody out there. Just give me a sense of how valuable you feel like he's going to be for you guys at the defensive end, and also maybe a couple other maybe 5th-year guys or veteran guys that have stood out that are back for that extra year.
Sure, yeah. We're fortunate on the defensive end with a lot of experience, especially on the close defense and in our goal, and Kobe being one of them. He's played for us ever since he stepped foot on campus, and has just done a great job continuing to build himself as a leader and as a defenseman, and definitely set the tone for the team in our scrimmage this past weekend against Bucknell. And then you got Shane Brennan, who's in his 6th year here at Towson, in the cage, and he played his first complete year last year. So he's had a lot of injuries, a lot of stuff that he's had to battle, and with his experience in the cage, you got Kobe, you got Garrison Galia back, Colby Bars, who started for us last year as a freshman. So at the close defense and goalie position, we need those guys to really take control of the defense and lead those the D-middies and long stick middies.
He is Coach Shawn Nadelen from Towson. He's leading us off here today on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, obviously we know defense has been sort of the standard for your time at Towson, but a year ago I know you guys were under 10 goals a game offensively. How do you get that going a little bit more this season?
Just being able to have the guys understand how to share the ball just a little bit better. We really focused on our shooting. We didn't shoot the ball as well as we wanted to last year. So Coach Musi and Coach Schilling have done a great job with our offense during the fall, just focusing on shooting mechanics, being more efficient in our shooting from where we shoot as far as how we shoot. We hope that obviously pays dividends in games and putting us in position to put more points on the board. So when we have those opportunities and earn those opportunities, that we get it past the goalie. But, I think overall, too, just having a little bit more experience at the midfield and at the attack, bringing in a couple transfers that we think are going to help us there as well is, something that we're excited about for our offense.
On the subject of the transfers, one notable last name for sure, Nick DeMeo coming in from Maryland. What sort of impact do you kind of foresee him having on your offense this season?
Nick's been a fun presence for our team. He's a very vocal young man on the field, plays with an edge and great intensity, and loves to shoot. Loves to shoot, which is not a bad thing for an attackman, and sometimes he forces the issue every now and then. But I'd rather a guy looking to score goals than being apprehensive. So. But he's been a really good addition, working with James Avanzato, who we had a previous relationship with, playing together down at College Park, and bringing those guys back together has been fun.
I talked a second ago about the standard, Coach, right? Obviously, you guys, fell a little bit short, and of course, we have to go back to 2020 when you weren't able to have that opportunity. Does that, the fact that it's been since 2019 now, since you guys have been in the NCAA tournament, do these guys talk about that? Is there sort of a pride factor there that says, look, this is Towson lacrosse. This isn't the way it's supposed to go? Knowing, you of course had no control over what happened 2 years ago. But is that something that sort of drives your guys as you go into this season?
It is the standard. And when you don't hit that standard, obviously that sticks with you. And it's something that I think helps fuel our motivation to just continue to work that much harder, be that much better, refine our process that much more, and be able to understand how and why we missed the mark and what we can control to get back to it. So I know our guys have been really focused on the process, continuing to, challenge each other in practice, and then be able to, again, just trying to increase our productivity all over the field, because that's kind of what we've been lacking, just, missing plays on the defensive end or offensive end through the middle of the field at the face-off, and just trying to be much more efficient and more productive on the field. We have the players, we have the staff to get it done. We just got to put it all together throughout the course of the season and earn some wins against tough opponents and put ourselves in position to get back to, the CAA championship and NCAA tournament.
Shawn, you just mentioned the face-off situation, which I know has been a little bit of a source of frustration over the last couple seasons, but last year for sure, 36.4%. How do you kind of see that unit developing here in the preseason, and do you anticipate that being something that's at least closer to 50-50, if not a little bit better for you this season?
Yeah, I think we'll be better for different reasons, and Shane Santora getting the experience he got last year and bringing that into this year, bringing in a freshman who's pretty talented, as well as a couple other options that we have at the X, but also our wing play needs to improve. I think we're doing a better job identifying the right personnel for that, and being able to try to sway it, obviously more in our advantage, whether it be right at the X or with strategic wing play and getting the ball up off the ground, possessing it and getting it into our offensive end. So I think we'll be in solid shape, and we get to test ourselves this coming weekend against one of the best face-off guys in the country, scrimmaging Lehigh with Sisselberger. So that's going to give us a great gauge in regards to what we look like there.
Yeah, I hear he's okay when it comes to that whole face-off thing. I've heard that.
Yeah.
That's, of course, an exhibition, and then the season opens the following Friday. Big Friday night game at United Stadium. Towson, Johns Hopkins on the 11th will be your first chance to see the Tigers. Coach, before I let you go, nothing, Patrick and I were talking before the show, rules-wise, nothing really significant. The shot clock reset, is there anything about that impacts you guys maybe a little bit? I know perhaps there's a deliberateness, but Is the shot clock reset something that's going to have any sort of significant impact on the game this season?
I'm sure it'll have some sort of impact. Not resetting the clock on the offensive reset to 80 seconds, and down to 60 seconds. That's, if you got the lead at the end of the game, that's 20 more seconds that you got to try to figure out how to protect that. So, from a offensive side and kind of game management side, it has its faults, and defensively it has its positives. So, it'll be interesting. Just hopefully, with the mechanics from the officials to the shot clock operators, you just hope everybody has it figured out and it can be smooth, where it doesn't really interfere too much with the pace of play, with having to reset things, stop play and reset things, which we saw in our scrimmage this past weekend. But I think overall, I think it's a step in the right direction, and it's a good thing for the sport.
Very good. Yes.
Just schedule-wise for you, back to a more traditional schedule of what you expect, and certainly not ducking anybody here in the early going. Hopkins, Virginia, Richmond, Loyola, all by March 2nd. In addition to Duke, I guess that game is supposed to be in Washington. I'm not quite sure about that, and Denver as well. That I'm sure you're both excited and eager to see exactly how your guys are going to be able to handle that non-conference slate.
Yeah, absolutely. We want the toughest competition week in and week out to be able to test ourselves and see where we're at. And, we face it every day in practice, going against each other. So the schedule definitely give us an opportunity on game day to see what that looks like against another Jersey. Challenging our guys with 3 games in the first 9 days of the season is going to be a fun start, and see what we're made of early on. And I think it gives our guys a great opportunity to, again, just really continue to come together, be able to play some games early, and, be able to figure out how you need to prepare, be prepared quickly with quick turnarounds, and lead us into a successful season.
And, of course, fingers crossed, big crowds everywhere this season and, normalcy. But, again, knock on wood as we say all of those things. Coach Shawn Nadelen, again, the season begins next Friday against Johns Hopkins. Always appreciate taking the time for us. Best of luck this year, and let's talk as the season goes on. Thank you for doing this.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Shawn Nadelen, Towson lacrosse coach, leading us off today on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens in studio with us this morning. Today's show brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel. The FanDuel Sportsbook is now open in Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. Catch all the action, get your bets in at one of their 51 self-service kiosks, Live Casino and Hotel, and the FanDuel Sportsbook now open in Hanover, Maryland. Patrick, your thumbnail on Towson for this season.
Well, I mean, we kind of covered a lot of it right there, right out of the chute. A lot of close games last year. They won a handful. You think about that Loyola game, which was really one of those moments where you thought maybe there was a little bit of juice to them.
Yep.
And at times there was. They were competitive in a lot of games. Couldn't hold on in certain spots. I think about that Delaware game in particular. They had a lead and it got away from them. They were with Drexel right there to the end, at the end of the regular season as well. So if you're looking at Towson, I think you're thinking that this is going to be a team that's stronger at the defensive end out of the chute. Kobe Smith anchoring that defense. Shane Brennan in the cage. Had an okay season last year. 51% on save percentage. So it wasn't so much. I mean, they gave up some goals, but I thought he was pretty good for them last year.
It really did seem like the story of the year is they just didn't score.
They just didn't score enough.
Right.
I mean, they scored 133 goals in 14 games.
Yep.
I mean, if you're averaging 9.5 goals a game, it kind of puts a ceiling on what you're able to do.
That math kind of doesn't work.
But I do think that the former Terp connection, James Avanzato and Nick DeMeo, you're going to hear a lot about that this season for Towson. I think those two guys are in for really good seasons. Avanzato was an 18-22 guy last year. Nick DeMeo didn't play a whole lot at Maryland, but obviously some pretty good bloodlines there.
Yeah, I've heard.
With his older brother being an anchor for the Terps here over the last several years. So I think those two guys are names to keep in mind as Towson ventures into that season. But like we mentioned a moment ago, in the first month or so of the season, Hopkins, Hopkins, Virginia, Loyola's in there. Richmond is no slouch. Midweek game against Mount St. Mary's thrown in there too. So we're going to learn a lot about the Tigers in the early going.
Of course, Patrick alludes to Anthony DeMeo. We'll talk about him with John Tillman a little bit later on. It's funny you bring up that non-conference thing. I actually, Patrick, I did some prep today. I've got all these notes prepared.
Is that a fact?
Right? Yeah, I did some prep for today's show. And I actually have on my list of questions for Peter Milliman of Johns Hopkins, hey, you get non-conference games back. Is that a blessing or a curse? Because it's the same concept, right? Like you just look at that schedule and you're like, holy hell, my God, are you better off playing non-conference games?
And when you look at Hopkins' schedule in particular, there's a couple of those sequences that they play Friday, Sunday against really good teams.
Right.
They open at Towson and then 2 days later go to Georgetown. They have a sequence in March where they play Navy at home on a Friday and 2 days later go to Delaware, who's really good and is going to be one of the, I think, is a team that's capable of winning a game in the postseason this year. So that is, if you're sitting there saying, do you want to get ready for a scenario where you're playing a Friday or a Thursday, Saturday in the Big Ten tournament, or a Saturday, Monday late in the season, last weekend of the season? I don't know if anybody's going to be better prepared for that sort of scenario than Hopkins, just based on those two combos.
All right, Navy is going to be next up, as Joe Amplo is going to join us here in a few minutes. So let's use this as an opportunity to get a thumbnail about them before we chat with Joe Amplo. Obviously, this was a team that had a very good season a year ago, came up just short, essentially kind of played a play-in game against Loyola in the Patriot League tournament, and weren't able to get past them, and Loyola we made that magical run, obviously, afterwards. But give me your thumbnail on Navy before we chat with Joe Amplo.
Well, yeah, I agree that last year was significant for Joe Amplo. Getting the victory at Loyola in the regular season, I thought was a major step for them. And then the next week, they just smoked Army at home. So those are two games that Navy really can build off of, even if the last game was a little bit of a disappointment. That said, they are going to be fairly young at the defensive end this year. And I think that, when you look at their schedule, it's built in the kind of way that is meant to be able to bolster a team a little bit, help it get its footing in the early going before it heads in into Patriot League play, I should say. I mean, you look at it, and there's not necessarily that long stretch of brand names. They have a Hofstra on there for sure. So it's not like, and they do play Hopkins later on, but it's not necessarily your.
There's an opportunity for some wins.
There are some opportunities. There's also, they play High Point at home. That's a tough game.
Sure.
So I think if you're them, you don't have that. When you think of a traditional Navy non-conference schedule, it has Maryland on it, and Maryland's nowhere to be seen on this thing with intent for the first time. Like last year, I don't think we would count that, and obviously pre-pandemic, their game was canceled. It was actually a neurovirus that was going through.
Oh, that's right.
Team,
I had forgotten about that. Yeah.
So that game was postponed / canceled, however you want to frame it. So,
but they wanted to get Johns Hopkins back on the schedule. And we'll talk about that here in a second with Joe Amplo, because that was supposed to happen. And,
correct.
Obviously.
So from what I understand, North Carolina is supposed to be on the schedule next year when this team is a little bit older, and I'm sure there was a little bit of schedule, mechanics involved coming out of last year that you just had some games you had to make, you had to offer up and whatnot because of various issues, because you played them last year, home and home type of thing. So in any case, I think Navy might not be a team that we learn as much about in the first month of the season as they're getting their footing.
The story for them might be more Patriot League play.
I think it absolutely will be.
All right. We will talk to Joe Amplo here in just 1 second. Today's show is also brought to you by Glory Days Grill, where I was this past Saturday before I took my kids to the Towson basketball game. By the way, that was a pleasant day all around. What a lovely time my kids had at the Towson game. They got themselves some foam fingers, and Charles Thompson led a stirring comeback, and they were super into it. We had a great time. But beforehand, we went and got some smoky thigh wings at Glory Days Grill. Of course, you can get your order in at glorydaysgrill.com. And if you want to hang out there tonight, or you want to pick up some food and take it home, you can do that. Again, glorydaysgrill.com. Still the opportunity for you to take advantage of some of the items on their seasonal menu. The smoky thigh wings work during any season. That is a problem. You mix in that Alabama barbecue sauce, you've got yourself a wonderful meal. They also have the short rib grilled cheese sandwich and the center cut sirloin with grilled shrimp and everything that you love at Glory Days Grill. Again, glorydaysgrill.com is the website for you to find out more. Patrick, I thought before we chat with Joe Amplo here, I had a thought about today. I brought up the rules change thing with Shawn Nadelen. I'm assuming that's pretty much what we're going to get from everybody. There can be instances where it becomes relevant, but overall it just doesn't seem that significant.
I don't think it's something people are going to fret about.
Right.
You know, I think it's just sort of, okay, you've got 20 seconds less to play with on offense. You have 20 seconds less to burn off, like he said, if you're holding a lead. And so I don't think it's going to be something that people are overtly thinking about and talking about a ton. It's going to be something that gets mentioned, particularly in endgame situations. I mean, think of it like in basketball, now that there's in college basketball, the reset when you get the offensive rebound
doesn't
20
go
rather than 30. You don't think about that
Nope, not at all.
in the middle of the first half. You think about it if there's one of those in a 1-point game in the final 30 seconds.
It's literally exactly the way they think about it, right? Like when it happens, you're going to say, oh, that's notable. It's a little bit different. But until it happens, it's not going to be something that you're going to think about much. All right, let's do this. Let's grab a break. We'll take our first break of the day. We come back in. We'll chat with Joe Amplo. That's next. It's the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens is here. We're chatting with the area's D1 men's lacrosse coaches here on Glenn Clark Radio. Duffy's Garage is a family-owned and operated car care facility in beautiful Baldwin, Maryland. An authorized Maryland inspection station and Napa Pro Care Center with ASE-certified techs. Tell them that Glenn Clark sent you and receive 10% off your service with a max discount of $150. You got to trust where you take your car, so take it to where I take mine. Duffy's Garage in Baldwin. Duffy'sGarageMD.com.
From all of the biggest games to the smallest events, make every bet worth your while at MyBookie. Start by doubling your first deposit instantly with MyBookie's first deposit bonus up to $1,000. Double your money before you even place a bet, and all you have to do is sign up and deposit using the exclusive promo code PRESSBOX at mybookie.ag. If your first deposit is $100, MyBookie adds $100 so you can start with $200 to play with. If your first deposit is $1,000, MyBookie adds $1,000 so you can start with $2,000 to play with. With tons of great games and prop bets to take advantage of this week, there is truly something for everyone. Don't wait any longer. Head to MyBookie today to redeem your double deposit bonus so you can start winning big today. That's promo code PRESSBOX to receive double your first deposit instantly in your account. No hassle, no wait. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
It's another cold winter here in Baltimore, but this time there's no hot stove to warm you up. Hi, I'm Paul Valley, and while there may be no activity in the world of baseball, I'll still be here every week with my co-host Zach Goodman to give you all the latest in the CBA negotiations as teams look to get back on the field in time for spring training. You can watch us live every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or facebook.com/PressBoxSports and listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. So tune in every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon for the latest in baseball coverage right here on the Bat Around.
Glory Days Grill's winter seasonal menu is back with comfort classics like their house-made meatloaf and short-rib grilled cheese. It also features the center-cut sirloin with grilled shrimp, the char-grilled pork tenderloin, grilled meatloaf sandwich, smoky thigh wings with Alabama barbecue sauce, and a Brussels and bacon appetizer. All of these items pair well with Devil's Backbone 8-point IPA or their anniversary IPA brewed by Devil's Backbone. And try their seasonal cocktails, Blood Orange Bourbon Cider, Apple Ginger Mule, and Captain's Hot Cider. Find out more and get your order in today at glorydaysgrill.com. Great food, good sports.
Window Depot Baltimore provides the highest quality Pro Via windows, doors, and siding for all budgets. The best is finally affordable. Call them today for a free in-home consultation at 410-941-3499. They also offer Zoom and FaceTime consultations in an effort to practice social distancing. A proud sponsor of the Tyus Bowser Show, you can find out more at WindowDepotBaltimore.com.
We can't imagine why you'd want to, but you can watch GCR live. It's at facebook.com/PressBoxSports. And try to guess whether these guys are wearing any pants.
It's our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens is here with us on a Tuesday. Early start to Glenn Clark Radio today. Next up on the hot seat, let's welcome in the head coach of the Naval Academy. He is Coach Joe Amplo, and he's with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us.
What's up, guys? Good to chat with you again.
It's good to chat with you. Of course, you guys get things started this Saturday. That nice, pleasant 20-degree outside weather game as you start things off against Mount St. Mary's at noon. Coach, I know so much of the conversation coming into the season for you guys nationally is about Xavier Arline. How happy were you to find out that he was going to make the choice to play lacrosse? And then I know he hurt himself in the Army game. Is he ready to go to start the season?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, it's nice to have him, and we're thrilled to have him. But the conversation nationally, I think our guys are they're displeased with the fact that they're not getting talked about. I think they've got something to prove, and I think that's the fun part of building a team. And Xavier knows that he's just one piece of a bunch of guys that've got something to prove here for Navy lacrosse this year.
Can you follow up on whether or not he's ready to go?
It's day to day right now,
okay.
So we're not sure if he's going to be ready to go this weekend. We'll make that decision probably on Friday afternoon.
Okay.
We're trying to be really cautious. Truthfully, I understand the responsibility that we have with his role here at the academy and making sure that we don't do anything that jeopardizes his ability to play both sports at the highest level.
Joe, Patrick Stevens here. Hope all is well. Wanted to ask a bit about the defense at this point. I know you guys had a lot of experience at that end of the field last season, and a lot of it graduated. Jackson Bonnet's still around. How is that unit kind of coming about, and just how much of an onus is there on a guy like Jackson right now as he heads into his second season?
Yeah, I mean, it's day by day. I mean, there's going to be moments where we look really good, and there's going to be moments where we look really bad because there is a lot of youth and inexperience on the defensive end. But when you look at our entire roster, I mean, the guys who we're going to count on this year, most of them have played at most 15 college lacrosse games. Mm-hmm. Even our juniors, who we rely on, they've only played 15 games. And our sophomores, last year they only played 9. So there's still a lot of inexperience and a lot of the guys that we're going to demand a lot of time from. And they're going up against teams that, seniors who have played 60 lacrosse games, some more with the 50 year and some 60 years out there. So defensively is one area where there's going to be a lot of inexperience, but I just think overall we are youthful compared to most of the teams that we're going to face.
Do you know who your goalie is going to be as of yet?
It's down to 3.
Right.
Yeah, I'll give you that. There's still a little bit of a battle here this week. We're just coming off a scrimmage on Sunday from playing Virginia and VMI, and we got through the film and evaluated it yesterday. I think that decision will probably be made this afternoon, but it's close. I mean, I don't think there's going to be one guy in the cage for Navy the entire year. I do think you're going to see a couple of faces.
Is that within each game, or more like, hey, we're going to give somebody the job, it'll be their crack, and then next game we'll revisit that?
I'm going into it, I think, with trying to just keep one guy in there at least for the first game, and then we'll see how it goes. We'll see how that person performs, and if there's a comfort level with me and the staff for this guy to be in there consistently. If not, we'll consider rotating halves or playing a third. I don't care. As long as they catch it and throw it to our team, whoever's in there, it doesn't matter to me.
You mentioned some of those guys that have only played in, like you said, 15, 16 games or whatever it's been over the last couple of years, and Patrick Skalniak has to be pretty much near the top of that list after being a first-team all-conference guy last year with 12 goals and 12 assists. What's his progression been like as you see him heading into his junior year, and just how big a piece is he to what you guys want to do on offense this season?
Yeah, he's as big a piece as we're going to have. He's, as you would imagine, with the kid who's been at the academy for 3 years, he's become more of a present leader. Mm-hmm. I think that's the most impressive thing. He's fully engaged in the leadership and understands what accountability looks like at this institution, and he does a good job of it. He's a great example for our young men. But specifically on the field, he's playing with an aggressiveness that, heck, we wish he had it 2 years ago. But now he's seen what it's going to take for him to be impactful as a college lacrosse player. And he plays really hard. He dodges downhill. He understands the offense. I'd like him to have a killer instinct every time he goes out there. I think that's his only drawback. But when he does, I think he's as good as anybody out there at the midfield position.
He is Coach Joe Amplo from Navy. He's with us on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, Patrick and I were talking before the break about the season that you guys had a year ago, which was very successful. You know, unfortunately, I know the goal is to get to the NCAA tournament, and it came up just a bit short. How do you build from there, right? How do you use that as a program to sort of drive you, knowing there was so many good things that happened during the course of the season, but yet there's still one more, sort of thing that you got to jump over in order to get to where I know you wanted to guide this program to?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying we had a good year last year, and I do think we took steps in the right direction, but I do think, based on last year's results, we're far away from where we need to be. And I need our guys to understand that. And in order to take those steps, they need to take that responsibility and that humility to know that we are far off and play with the confidence that they can, but also just an urgency to prove themselves. And I think if that gets lost in the shuffle, then we're going to miss a step that we can take this year. I think we asserted ourselves in terms of an identity last year, what Navy lacrosse is going to look and feel like moving forward. But now it's about performance. It's about performance in those big moments against really good teams and the ability to win when the lights go on. And I think that's hopefully the step we're going to take this year, that we're going to be able to compete with anybody on our schedule. We've got some tough teams, but I do think we've got some talent, and I'm just really curious to see what the edge is like or the urgency of this group as the year progresses.
Joe, on the subject of the schedule, how did you kind of go about building it? I know, obviously, that everybody has some limitations in any given year, and specifically this year, as people have to, pay back games and whatnot from last season. But what was kind of your approach to building this thing, and obviously the value of being able to finally have Hopkins back on the schedule and actually getting to play them this year?
Yeah, a lot of it is just ability of other teams and availability. Mm-hmm. You try and make agreements, and then COVID hits, and then everything gets jumbled around, and the unknown of what the season's going to look like. And once that gets tidied up, it's kind of a race to fill in your non-conference schedule. Ideally, you want to play the best teams out of conference that you can, and give your program a chance to build through those games, learn some lessons, and give yourself a chance to boost your RPI. I think we have a little bit of that. I also think we've got some teams that, we can compete with and grow and learn from. With a young roster, we need that. We need to be able to be in some really close games and, with teams that have something to prove. You look at Mount St. Mary's, they've got something to prove this weekend. And then moving to Mercer with a young coach and a young staff, and in their conference, I think they're getting better, and they've got some really good players. Getting on Long Island was important to us, not just for the food, but also for the exposure. I think, if you look at our recruiting classes moving forward, 50% of the guys are going to come from that metropolitan area. And being up there for 2 games was really important to our program. And I like that weekend that we've got. And then High Point obviously is a really good opponent at the end of February. So I think it sets up well for us getting into conference play, and then having the ability to play Hopkins certainly is terrific for a lot of reasons.
So to be clear, you guys will probably be going to Vincent's Clam Bar at some point while you're up there.
I will not give away my secret.
Interesting that you managed to schedule a whole weekend out of the trip, by the way. Interesting that you managed to pull it off that way.
It's a little self-serving, but
Joe Amplo with us. Again, the season kicks off for Navy on Saturday as they host Mount St. Mary's at noon in Annapolis. Coach, acknowledging, yes, to your point, that he's only one part of the equation, but of course there is great interest in Xavier. It's been a couple of years, right? Like, how has he adapted to getting back into the swing of lacrosse? And what should people know about him as a player beyond just someone who gets a lot of attention, because he's a quarterback and because he was, a highly regarded recruit a couple years ago?
Well, one, he's an unbelievable human being. I mean, he's confident, but he's also humble enough to know what he doesn't know. He's been like a sponge the past couple of weeks with trying to learn. I think he's trying to focus on engaging with his teammates. And, when he said he was going to play, the first thing he asked me is like, I want to talk to the team. And the thing he said was, I want to try and be the best teammate in this room. And I think that's really important for him. On the field, I mean, look, he comes with such a natural ability. He's quick as can be. He's certainly gotten stronger, obviously working with football. But I think it's that confidence level that he potentially brings that can help shift the mindset of this program. That, to me, is the biggest asset. He's certainly going to be a tough cover for a lot of teams. How he fits into our offense, that remains to be seen. The potential for him is to be a top-end player. But it's going to take him a while to understand how to play college lacrosse. He grew up where, playing for Shawn Wading River, most of the time it was give 24 the ball and everybody make sure
clear out, yeah,
room to run.
yeah.
But he's got to understand how to manage a game and the ebbs and flows of a quarter and a half. So, I think that part of it to me is the most challenging thing. His ability is still there. He still has everything he had in high school and more. There's no question about it. But how does he handle, a 3-goal run or, slowing the ball down after we've just given up 2 goals, things like that. And his ability to manage the game and be the quarterback potentially is what I'm most curious about.
When I look at just about any team this year, I wonder if maybe that stereotypical freshman to sophomore jump might be even more amplified than it normally is, just because of a close to normal summer, close to normal off season, all that sort of stuff after kind of a weird school year last year. And so for guys like John Jarris and Bryson Ree and Dane Swanson in particular, have you seen those sorts of jumps, and how are those guys kind of sizing up as part of your plans for this season?
Yeah, I think all 3 of those guys are on a great path. Jarris he's just, his bigness is what makes him impactful. And, he's a kid who doesn't get too high or low and has always been steady. And again, if he can play with a little bit more urgency, I think he could be one of the most dangerous players in our league. Dane Swanson, he was fighting injury last year, played on a broken foot, hurt shoulder, and really gutted his way through a freshman season and became an impact player for us. Now he's 100% healthy, and you just see this fire in this kid's eyes. Mm-hmm. He's an excellent lacrosse player, and he's starting to make the offense, or at least the midfield, part of his own. And that's nice to see as a sophomore for a kid who's really only played in, 5 or 6 college lacrosse games. So I'm curious to see how impactful he can be. I think we're going to see a big jump. And Bryson Reed's battling. He's battling to be in that top 6 midfield because we've got a lot of talent on that end of the field. And that's a good thing, because a player like that, if he's still battling for some playing time, means there's other good ones out there.
Probably should have mentioned Max Hewitt as well. I had a list there. Probably didn't see it in my chicken scratch. So, but there's obviously a lot of sophomores that you've got to work with there.
Yeah, it's a good class. It is, and we're thankful of that. So.
He is Coach Joe Amplo from Navy, and again, the season gets underway this Saturday at noon against Mount St. Mary's down in Annapolis. Coach, appreciate it as always. We'll be checking in as the season goes along. Good luck, and let's talk again real soon, all right?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Coach Joe Amplo from Navy. Next up with us here on our College Lacrosse Preview Show this morning is Patrick Stevens is in studio with us. Patrick, we got a little bit of a break here before Charley Toomey is going to join us. Actually, he's going to come in studio and hang out with us because it's a really quick commute for him. It's about all of 20 seconds from Loyola to here. So we say, hey, we'd like it if you stopped by and said hello. Before we do that, I'd like to talk about some of the big national stories coming into this year. And is Syracuse the biggest national story in college lacrosse coming into the 2022 season?
It might be. I mean, like in a kind of superficial way, it is, in the sense that here it is, 20 years after everybody thought Gary Gate was going to be a Division I men's lacrosse coach.
Yep.
A little bit closer to here than Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes over at his alma mater, had a great run as the women's coach up in central New York. Dave Petramala, the defensive coordinator, you see those press conferences or those pictures from him at practice wearing orange.
It's very weird, right?
It is.
Very weird.
Very, very, very jarring to see that. So you basically have a dream team of 2 of the, 5 best players of all time, two of the 10 best players of all time. I'm probably cheating them by saying 10.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely more like 5, right? Yeah.
I mean, we're talking Rushmore type of a scenario here. And Dave Petramala, obviously an accomplished head coach in his own right, and you get the sense that he's basically in charge of the defense up there, and Gate is going to be a guy that comes in and has a fair number of pieces to work with. Watching them last year, their big problem was at the defensive end. They just kept getting bombed, giving up 17, I think it was, in the NCAA tournament to Georgetown. I feel like they gave up 20 a couple times. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but defensively, they had all sorts of problems last season. But the offensive pieces were actually pretty good. They didn't entirely fit together great. The Chase Scanlon situation did them no favors whatsoever. But I think that they're going to be a little more dialed in, and certainly if Dave Petramala has anything to do with it, more buttoned up on defense, because that's and I'm sure for him, there's an incentive after the way things ended at Hopkins.
Sure.
And the defenses in his last couple of years were not up to the standards that he's had. So I think that there's certainly going to be a lot of curiosity as to how that situation works out. I don't know if there's enough up there for them to suddenly go from being a team that got bombed out of the first round to making a Final Four. I mean, they had enough problems last year that there's a pretty big gap between where they were in late May last season and where they want to be. At the same time, if you're a Syracuse fan and you've just had a decade plus where you've been to one Final Four, they won the back-to-back titles in 2008 and 2009, and since then they've made one Final Four. And that was in 2013, I believe it was. They lost to Duke in Philadelphia in the championship game. You got to be excited just to have something different, change of pace, and those two names. And Gary Gate, an accomplished coach. Dave Petramala, an accomplished coach. It's not just simply that it's not a situation where you're bringing in a program legend and just saying roll the ball out.
Right.
I mean, this is serious stuff. So I definitely think they are going to bear monitoring. I don't know if that's what we're going to be talking about the last two weekends of the season.
That in mind, Virginia is still quite loaded.
Yes, Virginia is quite loaded. And I know some people would argue that Connor Schellenberger, after his monster postseason, should be the preseason player of the year. I certainly got a little bit of flack from that from a friend or two from down in Charlottesville.
Okay.
I think I picked Chris Gray from North Carolina, one of the two returning Tewaaraton winners. But let's be serious. Like, Virginia has 2 number 1s in Matt Moore and Connor Schellenberger. They have another loaded recruiting class coming in. They found themselves at the defensive end. They have a formula that works. They've won 8 consecutive NCAA tournament games. That's not an easy thing to do, even if there was a 2-year gap between them. And the Lars Tiffany approach has really, really settled in down there. And so if they're not the preseason favorite, they're 1A.
Yep.
And I think Maryland would be the other team that's there. I think Virginia has lost certainly some pieces, like an Ian Laviano has graduated. Jared Connors, the long stick midfielder, really, really valuable player. And when you think about how the Lars Tiffany system works, Shawn Kerwin, the offensive coordinator down there, coming from Tufts, plugging it in at Brown, and now at Virginia, the positions that are most important: face off, get the ball; long stick, create havoc; goalie, make stops and get outlets. And so they have a face-off guy that's back in Petey LaSalla who's fabulous.
It's quite good.
He's not Mike Sisselberger, but he's the next
Yep.
best. He's the next
Yep.
best thing. He's not quite an 75-80% guy, but he's really good. But the long stick midfielder spot is open. Jared Connors was just insane in terms of the amount of workload that he had. That's something that Lars and I talked about late in the fall. Was just his replacements are like, how did he take all these runs? And then in goal, Alex Rode, who turned out to be a really big game goalie, helped them win 2 national titles and played his best in May. He has graduated and moved on. So looks like a freshman is going to be in the case for Virginia. And Lars has told me, normally you'd say maybe that's a cause for concern, but this dude's like basically already settled in. So, I think Virginia not just in good position to be sitting there knocking on the door come this year in East Hartford. But they're set up pretty well to be a factor moving forward year after year.
All right, save Maryland and Loyola because I'll come back there in a second. The other biggest to you national storylines coming into this season.
Other big national storylines. I would say, what's Duke gonna do? You know, are we going to see that sort of emergence of Brennan O'Neill, who was really good as a freshman, but that was still Michael Sowers was the center of attention on that Duke team. It was weird with Duke. They went like 13-3 last year, right? And you just, it's silly to sit there and say a team that went 13-3 and made the semifinals had a disappointing season. So I'm not going to say that. But you kept thinking they could. Isn't there more here? And there just wasn't. Like they were a really good team that won a bunch of close games, and they'd added a bunch of big names and they threw them together, and it wasn't quite as potent as everybody expected it to be. I think. The Sowers didn't fit their system maybe as well as a lot of people thought he was going to. Brennan O'Neill very much fits their system, and I think that they're probably going to be built a lot around him. Obviously, they're very midfield-driven as well, and Nakai Montgomery back for his 5th season. They're going to be there. Like, they are there.
He played football, too, correct?
He did play football, yes. And so, they're going to be there. The question is do they figure it out? It's weird. It's now been... It'll be 8 years now.
Wow!
Since they won the national title.
Boy,
but they're there every year,
right? Of course,
like,
yes.
I mean, it's not like they just disappeared or anything, and so you feel like there's another one floating around out there, right? Like it feels like they're gonna bust back through here at some point and win another championship, and this very well may be the year. I mean, from talking to people around the sport, there's a sense that your top 3. Maryland, Virginia, Duke, however you want to scramble them. That's your top 3. And then, it's your guess is as good as mine for anybody else.
So let's cover a couple quickly, and then I'll come back to Maryland and Loyola. The return of the Ivy League.
The return
of
the Ivy League. Today's the first day of Ivy League practice. It's great. I think when you look at the top of that league, it's really interesting. Yale was so good for so long and kept incrementally getting better. Like Yale isn't an out of nowhere type of thing. They just kept getting a little bit better each season. Won a title in 18, made the final in 19. They obviously had a lot of guys transfer out to be able to use their final year, but they also had a bunch of guys withdraw to preserve their Ivy League eligibility. So, Andy Shea had one player on campus last spring. But they also have a new field house, which is essentially maybe better than what we see over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
wow.
It's pretty legit. So they're good. Penn is a program that that we saw a breakout season from in 2019, and they've still got a lot of good pieces. Sam Handley might be the best midfielder in the country. I mean, he was a first-team All-American as a freshman, and we've barely seen him the last 2 years. He's played one game the last 2 seasons. So. The sense that I get is that he is ready to have a monster season for the Quakers. And then Cornell, a team that lost its coach. Peter Milliman comes to Hopkins, so they have not only not played since the pandemic started, but they have a coach that's been on the job for nearly 2 years and hasn't coached a game. So it's great to have that 0 in the loss column. Connor Buzik, the former midfielder for the Big Red in the middle of the last decade. So they went young, promoted an assistant, but a guy that understands that sort of rugged, resilient Cornell legacy, that culture up there. And so those 3 teams, plus Brown, plus Princeton, we saw Dartmouth starting to get better a couple years ago, Harvard under Jerry Byrne. I think the Ivy League is going to be back in full force this season, and we'll hear from a number of those teams by the time May rolls around.
All right, now let's talk about you trying to find a team outside of those. Patrick Stevens is with us. It's a College Lacrosse Preview Show this morning. Trying to find a team outside of those 3 that you identified. Georgetown would seem to be the one that would jump out. Is that the biggest national title threat outside of those 2-3 teams?
Yeah, I would say first of all, if you put me on the spot to say who's maybe built, it's Loyola or Georgetown.
Okay.
Loyola because they're so old, and we'll get to them in a minute. Georgetown because defensively they're going to be really stout. They've got the National Goalie of the Year back in Owen McElroy. Will Bowen, the North Carolina transfer. He transferred not because he was unhappy or anything. He transferred because he had graduated in 3 years, and the graduate program he wanted wasn't available. Except at basically 2 Division I schools. So Georgetown won the lottery getting this guy to show up because he would have stayed in Chapel Hill otherwise. So Will Bone, really bright, analytical guy, and also a first-team All-American, it should be said. He's one of those guys, like Kevin Warren said after they lost to Virginia in the quarterfinals last year, that Virginia had a bunch of velociraptors on defense. Well, Will Bowen's a velociraptor. Okay. So he's a big, rangy dude. And so you throw him in there with Gibson Smith, a return. And it feels like he's been there forever. Like Kevin has joked that.
But it kind of feels like everybody in college lacrosse has been there forever at this point, Patrick.
This is one of those guys that really does feel like like maybe to a greater degree. So they have a lot of answers all over the place. Offensively, they're a little bit of a mirror of Maryland, right? Like they had a guy, that sort of galvanizing program figure. For Maryland, it was Jared Bernhardt. For Georgetown, Jake Carraway, who's graduated. But almost all the other pieces are back. And so that TJ Haley on attack is going to get a little more attention. Graham Bundy out of the midfield. Dylan Hess was a dude that basically was running around defenders like they were traffic cones in the NCAA tournament against Syracuse. Now, the big question for Georgetown is they got through to the quarterfinals for the first time in a long while last year. Last year was the first time in 14 years that they had made the quarterfinals. Can they use that experience? And it was not a fun experience getting railroaded by Virginia.
Sure.
Their face-off guy got hurt
it was
in the first 30 seconds, and the game was basically over in the first quarter. You know, is that something that really propels them and sort of nudges them forward? Is that something that is a growth moment, or does that kind of become what it was for Georgetown in the middle of the aughts, which was that's sort of like where you top out? So they're somebody that's worth watching, and let's mention North Carolina, Notre Dame in there too, because they each have a Tewaaraton finalist back. Chris Gray at North Carolina, they have to rebuild that ancient midfield of theirs that was full of fifth-year guys. I mean, Justin Anderson was 25 years old and was he had a kid, was married, all this other stuff. So that team I think has some issues to sort of sort out early on, but Chris Gray is going to be able to provide a lot of answers. And Notre Dame, they've got a Kavanaugh. Pat Kavanaugh really had a breakout season last year for them. So they've got that answer, and they've got the answer in the cage with a second-team All-American in Liam Entenmann. So can they figure out, in particular, the face-off piece of the equation? They had 2 guys that were really fabulous, Leonard and Gallagher. Gallagher was a guy that had been at Penn for their quarterfinalist appearance in 2019. So can they figure out the face-off piece of it? Both of those teams, I think, will be variables when all is said and done this season.
All right. Now, quickly, before it is, by the way, official. Tom Brady has made his retirement official this morning, which ends that drama of the last. It was very absurd the way this went over the last few days. But he did make it official this morning. In past years, it would have been something we probably would have talked about with Dave Petramala during the course of this program. But Dave, of course, no longer the coach at Johns Hopkins and won't be joining us during the preview show. I've got nothing more to say about it, and I'm sure it'll be something we'll talk about the rest of the week. But it is now official. Tom Brady, on his own social, has announced that he is retired from football. So there's the end of that. Now, let's go to the 2 teams here locally that appear to be threats to win the national championship. And we'll start with Maryland because we'll try to lead Loyola into the conversation we have with Charley Toomey. The big storyline, we've already referenced it a couple times, Jared Bernhardt was the best player in the country a year ago, was a marvel, won a national championship playing football at Ferris State this year. He's gone. But this is still Maryland. They are still loaded. Everywhere you look, there is talent. There is every reason to believe that they are a threat to win the national championship again this year.
The conversation that I had with John Tillman at the end of the fall was, okay, Superman's gone, but all the super friends are still around.
Right.
Okay. So Logan Wisnauskas had about the quietest 70-point season you've
It's amazing, isn't it, right?
This year, okay? And so he is a very business-like fellow. And, I can see him. Obviously, he benefited from having Jared Bernhardt around. But he's really good, too. He's a 6-year guy. So you've got another one of these graybeards, essentially, that's going to be sort of the center of attention. But they've still got Bubba Fairman, and they've still got Kyle Long, and they've still got Anthony DeMeo. And, they added Keegan Kahn from Villanova. They added Jonathan Donville, the first pick in the indoor league draft from Cornell. By the way, Jonathan Donville comes to College Park specifically to
I
get a master's
read this,
program
yeah.
in journalism.
Yeah.
Okay?
How about that?
So I think this is one of the rare times where coaches
Right.
would be happy about
journalists,
journalism,
yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
So, they are, they still have a ton of pieces. Defensively, Brett Makar's back.
Mm-hmm.
Logan McNaney's back. Matt Rahill's back. I mean, all these dudes are back. They're strong in the defensive midfield. And we'll get into it more with John Tillman in a little bit. Can their face-off situation get a little bit better? I think that's maybe the big question for them. It seems to be a common thread for a lot of the teams we're talking about today. But there's a lot of answers there. And I think that when you look at the rest of the Big Ten, there's a lot of questions pretty much everywhere other than Rutgers. I think Hopkins is going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
But they still went 4-9 last year. They were close to top 10 good by the time the season ended. Ohio State, Penn State, they've got questions after, down years that were partially caused by having a conference-only schedule.
Sure.
But, Penn State was also replacing Grant Ament.
Yeah, that's a lot, right.
That was a variable, Ohio State never seemed quite right last season. And then Michigan is continuing to improve. We saw that when they came to Homewood and won. That we saw that in the Big Ten tournament when they won a game at Ohio State. So, but I think besides Rutgers, which added an influx of transfers and is going to be a bear because of it, among those guys, Mitch Barlow, who had been at Penn, as a guy that's just going to really help them out after having lost so much of their attack to graduation. Those guys that had also similar theme, right? Been there forever. Colin Kirst back in the cage for them. But I look at Maryland, and I think they're the clear-cut Big Ten favorite. And some very interesting games in the first month and a half of the season, including Virginia in a game that's supposed to be played at Audi Field. Down in D.C. on March 19th. They have Notre Dame in the mix. They played Loyola the second game of the season, Loyola's first game of the season. So we're going to learn a lot about Maryland, too, but I think that they have a lot of pieces that are going to put them in a spot that allows them to remain in that top 4 or 5 pretty much all season.
And you referenced Loyola. Let's talk about them because, to your point, they are experienced. It's sort of a Jimi Hendrix situation that they've got going on there. They have fifth-year guys all over the field. They made that magical run, came up just short of reaching the Final Four a year ago. Why wouldn't they be considered among the contenders to win a national title this year?
They should be. And from talking to some coaches throughout the sport, there's a sense that, if you have all those dudes and you're also one of the best coach teams in the country, it's not just Charley Toomey. It's Mark Van
incredible
Arsdale
staff, yeah.
and Matt Dwan, and they do a fabulous Steve Vagness working with the face-off man. So there is a lot to like about them, whether it's – and like you said, you got Aiden Olmstead and Kevin Lindley on attack. I think McNulty is the best long pole in the country with Jared Connors gone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Sam Schaefer having that moment last year, having figured things out after getting yanked in the middle of April, gets that great last-second stop against Denver in the first.
It was the moment of the season a year ago.
I mean, that was a forever moment for a goalie.
Yep.
And that was something that he told me the week after. Like, that's what you dream of when you're in the backyard playing. Like, you make that stop in the postseason. So, maybe you'd rather that be the national title game than a first-round game.
Of course,
but it's still pretty awesome.
You still get it, yeah.
It's pretty cool. So, you look around at that team. Savio back at the X. So many answers, and they get a bunch of guys healthy too. And we'll get into that with Charley Toomey here in a little bit, just because you kind of forget about that you've got Joey Kamish. You forget about Davis Lindsay, who didn't even play last year, as a freshman, who's going to be a monster, I think, for them over the long haul. So there are a lot of elements that are in place for that team, and there probably wasn't anybody other than Virginia that felt better about the way they were playing over the last month or so of the season last year, I would say.
Oh, no question, right.
And so that has to have some sort of impact, if only that you're not feeling like you were feeling when you were 4-4 and just kind of felt like you'd lost your way a little bit. And, I think, too, Loyola is one of those teams that you can look up and say, hey, because of all the pandemic restrictions, because of the way they run their program, maybe that was a team that got hurt more than most did by having to deal with all that stuff. I know that that's sort of an equal thing. Everybody had to deal with some sort of issues. But maybe they got dinged by that a little bit more in terms of how they built their team and what have you. Not built their team through recruiting, but just built their team through a normal school year cycle, not even having freshmen on campus in the fall and stuff like that. So I think that continuity is definitely going to help them out.
All right, well, he's here, so we're going to chat with him next as we continue on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Charley Toomey from Loyola is going to take his spot on the hot seat. Today's show is also brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Make the most out of every day in a Toyota RAV4, available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today. Patrick Stevens is with us. Charley Toomey from Loyola joins us next. It's Glenn Clark Radio. Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Duffy's Garage is a family-owned and operated car care facility in beautiful Baldwin, Maryland. An authorized Maryland inspection station and Napa Pro Care Center with ASE-certified techs. Tell them that Glenn Clark sent you and receive 10% off your service with a max discount of $150. You gotta trust where you take your car, so take it to where I take mine. Duffy's Garage in Baldwin. Duffy'sGarageMD.com.
The latest issue of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special annual Best of issue. On the cover, we celebrate Justin Tucker as our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, honoring his historic on-field achievements, but also the unprecedented relationship he shared with Baltimore. Inside, we recognize the top people, performances, and moments of 2021, including Cedric Mullins' incredible season and the dominance of local Paralympic athletes. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farms stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
The biggest pro wrestling stars today and all time all have one thing in common. You've heard them on Jobbing Out.
Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks.
Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
The great Kurt Angle.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Matt Riddle.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
The champ, Drew McIntyre.
Oh, thank you for having me.
The great Ron Simmons.
Damn.
Keith Lee.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Bill Goldberg.
My pleasure.
Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mick Foley is with us.
This is the greatest name for a wrestling show I've ever heard.
MJF.
I'm glad you're happy I'm on this show because I'm freaking miserable.
Le champion!
Chris Jericho.
Le champion.
AJ, Aaron, Brandon, and Glenn are talking pro wrestling every week on Jobbing Out. Find it at PressBoxOnline.com/radio, iTunes, and SoundCloud.
Stay tuned. Your chance to win $1 million is coming up. Probably not from us. You're listening to Glenn Clark Radio.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens is with us in studio, and now joining us in studio, one of my favorite people, and of course the head coach at Loyola. He is Charley Toomey, and he's back with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview. Coach, first of all, I know it's a terrible trip that you got to make in order to get here. I know it's just daunting every year for you to make that 30-second trip over to the studio. So we really greatly appreciate you, the sacrifice that you make, making that travel to be here with us in studio again.
Thanks, Glenn. I was just sitting out front with Cassidy saying, hey, you know what? I was planning the practice schedule. It's 9:38. I think I got to get over there.
Yeah, 9:38.
Yeah.
So what'd you do with the other 20 minutes once you got here?
Like I said,
you
Cassidy and I are out front chatting and waiting for the call.
Well, it's good to see you. It's great to chat. Coach, you and I talked a lot about the magical run last year. How do you get that team from the end of the season and not the team that was going through all the struggles that you guys were going through beforehand? How are you confident that that's who you are now as a group after seeing what they were able to do late in the season?
That is absolutely the question that we've kind of posed to them, right? Midway through the year, at 5-5, as a coach, I was writing down things that were happening that, as a staff, we said, this isn't us, right? Like, we're not practicing the way that we need to practice, and we're not. Some of the little things, I feel like some of the traditions that we have, partly because of COVID, we were unable to do. Go on a retreat, go to Sabatino's together, do some of the little things that kind of brought a team together. And, then all of a sudden, fortunately, we were able to get a couple wins under our belt. But I watched the confidence grow. And that is what we're hopeful that we're going to be able to hold on to. What I did as a coach this year was to say, okay, let's put ourselves in a position to go up north and travel early. So this week we're going to prepare to travel up to Syracuse and have a scrimmage up there and learn to get on the road, learn to stay in a hotel again, because there were no hotels until the tournament last year.
There were some bus issues last year, too.
There were some early season bus issues. Yeah, but, again, just getting back to some of the small traditions, and I've been very happy with what I've seen from our seniors. We have 10 graduate students, and so they understand, kind of what's expected, inside, outside of our locker room. So that's what we're trying to really preach to them is let's be that team that made the run and really supported each other and did things the right way. So we'll see. I mean, again, it's just getting started, and we're coming off of a scrimmage where that really forced us to have this conversation. And playing inside, we'd never had a game inside, and I thought it was a struggle for both goaltenders to see the ball. And Sam was a big part of our run last year. There's no doubt about it. So that's something that we're looking towards. Trying to get excited about playing this weekend, put him back in the goal, and let's just see if we can take that step. We have 2 weeks before we play Maryland.
When you mention those 10 grad transfers, I'm sure a big part of you is thrilled to have those guys back for an extra year. How first off, the excitement level and the value that those guys bring, but also, how much of a process was it to kind of iron all that out and make sure that all those guys were actually going to be able to be back for another year?
It's funny. You said the word transfer, and I know that you know that they're graduates of Loyola, but that's one of my big bugaboos in the Patriot League is that we are unable to talk to any transfers at the graduate level. Having 10 kids that had an extra year in our locker room, I feel like Ryan McNulty's been at Loyola as long as I have. But it just, again, they understand – the expectations day in, day out, on and off the field. And the one thing that I really believe is important to us is just how our upperclassmen embrace our freshmen and really relate to them, the importance of the little things, and obviously we've got some pretty talented guys. We've got a guy in Kevin Lindley that has an opportunity to make a run at the NCAA record if he can get 61 goals, I believe, this year. So it could be the all-time NCAA goal scorer, right? So Ryan McNulty, is a returning All-American. Sam, in every spot we feel like we've got a guy, that can lead, whether or not it's Matt Hughes has 2 years of eligibility, but he's in our graduate program now. And so whether or not it's, goal, D, short sticks, Matt Bennis calls me in December and says, Coach, I'd love to come back. And so that was a short stick we weren't even expecting to be in our locker room. He didn't play the fall with us. Comes back and, we're welcoming him with open arms. And, again, just another leader and a veteran in that locker room. So we're real excited about it.
Loyola coach Charley Toomey is with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, you mentioned Sam. One of the great stories of the entire sport last season, frankly, was what Sam went through and your relationship with him and him coming through and having that moment. You referenced the scrimmage and maybe it wasn't the best day for him, but how much do you feel as though he has gotten past everything he's went through and what you saw at the end of the year is who Sam Schaefer is now coming into this season, and how much confidence do you have in him because of that?
Yeah, Sam, in years past, you'd be sitting at this point, right, with scrimmages and your first game on the horizon, and you felt like you went with Sam because it was a seniority issue. He might have been the oldest guy there, but there wasn't a lot of separation, maybe between 1, 2, and 3. And what we have seen in practice is that there is a larger gap, and a lot of that has to do with his confidence. Mm-hmm. And when Sam and the defense are playing with great confidence, and it's not just stopping the ball; it's leading a defense. It's communicating and getting us all to do the right things. And that's where I've seen the biggest difference in Sam's game, But he'll be the first to tell you, I want to see the ball outside and not inside, And I don't blame him for that. That's a challenge, having played that position.
Aiden Olmstead, Kevin Lindley have been standards for you guys for a long, long time on the attack. That tandem, how connected are they at this point, playing together now for 5 years, and just what are they going to mean to you guys this season, you think?
Well, obviously, very talented players.
Yeah, they're okay.
Yeah, both have been on the field since day one, right? And so, as you mentioned, that connection that they have together, they just know. It's almost like twins, right? Like they know where each other are going to be at certain times. But the one thing that I would really give Aiden credit for, as well as Coach Van Arsdale, is to make and challenge Aiden to be a little more multidimensional. And so at the end of the year last year, we were bringing him out of the box and kind of creating some matchup problems. So he's not just an attackman for us that's going to lead and hold the ball at X like Pat was. We can kind of move him around the field and attack his matchup from different areas. And again, that really was part of the flip of the switch for us mid-year last year, was Coach Van making some of those little changes on the offensive end that I thought made us pretty dangerous.
When you look at those other offensive pieces, we get caught up in Olmstead and Lindley, but you have a Joey Kamish that's back from injury, a Patra back from injury, Davis Lindley. I know you've talked about. We haven't seen him in a college game yet. How much does that depth, you think, going to help you this season, and just how ready are each of those guys to be able to contribute in a more significant way than in the past?
Yeah, like I said, I thought you started to see it towards the tail end, and really a kid named Evan James coming on last year late in the game really took a lot of pressure off of those two guys to feel like they had to do a lot to have us win games. Watching Patra, there were days that we walk off the field and say, he might be our best offensive player. Evan James, you could say that about a day that you come to a game and watch us play, where the ball's in his stick. We're sharing the ball, and guys have the green light to kind of attack their matchups. Liam Baton, locally from Loyola Blakefield, is playing really, really well. Riley C. is a captain for us. I mean, we get to, have the ability to watch these guys develop as a group, and that's what they're doing. The ball's not dying in any one person's stick. They're moving the ball the way that you'd like to see it happen, and it's different. Without a Pat Spencer, the ball was going to be in his stick either on the front end or the back end of it. You were hoping for good reason, and we don't have that guy, and I think the guys have learned how to play without a Pat, right? Like you still just. You have to have that confidence. It starts with somebody running by somebody and then moving the ball, and hopefully at the end of the play it's going to find Kevin Lindley's stick somewhere. But if it doesn't, we're going to be just okay.
Is Charley Toomey. The season gets underway next Saturday down at Maryland. By the way, who the hell? What is it? Are you going to schedule the Warriors next? Like, what is this? Your scheduling is insane. Maryland and Duke again this season. Virginia last year, obviously. And I get it. You're testing yourself early to have yourself ready for the NCAA tournament. I understand how that works. But, boy, you're not messing around playing an early season game in College Park. Did you think about that at all? Like, is this really the type of thing that we need to do right out of the chute?
Well, I've always felt like playing Virginia was just was a great opening game. It may be the best game in Division I on that day, right? And you have your kids' attention the second they step on campus and you're starting to watch film. They know what they're getting into. Obviously, University of Maryland is just John Tillman's done such a great job over the years there, and it's a local game, right? So it adds another local rival, to our schedule. And in losing Virginia and picking up Maryland, I still think you have our guys' attention. I think you have the state's attention, and it should be a fun one. But again, when Virginia kind of made that decision that they were going to go in another direction, my first phone call was to Maryland, and we've always felt like that would be a great game. But we never wanted it to be on a Wednesday for both teams. Sure. That's a real challenge with the Big Ten and the Patriot League. So we had an open date. We were able to kind of nail this thing down for the next 4 years, and we're real excited about it.
So it's at Maryland, at Johns Hopkins, then the following week the home opener against Rutgers at Ridley Athletic Complex. You mentioned Pat a couple times. He's back, right? We've seen him in a lot of basketball games this season. Of course, he's just down the road playing in D.C. Has he been involved with you guys at all? Have you brought him back over? I'm sure there's some of it that's personal, that it's just friendships, that he's chatting with guys. But have you involved him formally at all, having him back in the area and, frankly, being on campus as much as he's been over the course of the last couple of months?
We're letting Pat be Pat right now. It is great to have him back in the stands, and at some point we're going to pull that card out of our pocket when we need to. But we really haven't asked Pat. We're letting him do his thing, and I know he's enjoying playing with the Go-Go's over there. And as coaches, we are. If we're not watching our own film, we're trying to figure out a way to find Pat playing on TV. So we're real excited for Pat to be able to kind of follow that dream. And obviously the way his younger brother is playing, has kind of put Loyola, back in that position of playing, excellent hoops at the moment and vying for Patriot League play. So, again, just Pat, his family, his grandparents, what a special group of people. And we're always excited to welcome Pat back.
Wanted to double back to Ryan McNulty for a minute here. You mentioned 6-year guy, been around forever. We've been saying that a lot today. I've been saying that a lot today. Yeah. The guy's been in college forever. But when I think about impact long poles in the country, I mean, he's the first name that comes to mind. And obviously with the way that you guys have played over the years, with that rope unit being so significant, I got to think that he has to be, one of the more valuable guys that are on your roster, and certainly
maybe in the country.
Certainly. Basically, in the country. I mean, just how meaningful is he for what you guys try to do, especially given the amount of experience he has in doing what you guys do?
It's and I mentioned it earlier, guys that have the green light, right? Like, and our rope unit has the green light, and it probably starts with Ryan. He's gonna hopefully take away the number one matchup, the number one midfielder on our opponent, but also coming down in transition and having the ability, to maybe give it up and get it back and shoot from 18 or face dodge that guy if it's a bad approach, and just make the right play. And that's what you expect from some of your older guys. Coach Dwan does an incredible job of developing our long poles and has over the years with guys like Scott Ratliff and P.T. Ricci. And, I mean, it's not, so now we have a guy that's been here, obviously was injured as a freshman and got a year back, and then with COVID got a year back. We're running out of classes for him. But, to know that that he is out there on the first wing of every face-off, if it's not Bailey Savio picking up the ball, we've got a really good guy coming in on one wing of the face-off that has the ability to pick it up and then push our offense, not just give it up and get off the field. He's going to stay on and create havoc a little bit.
They're electric plays, too. I mean, the way they fire up the sideline, the way they fire up a crowd, it's just – there's something about that I don't know how you truly define it, because a goal is a goal, right? No matter where the goal is scored from, it's goal's a goal. But it just feels like it does something different to your team, the way that you're, particularly Ryan, but your long poles can get in and score. It just, I don't know. There's no sabermetric way of explaining it, right? But it just does seem like those goals are a little bit different.
It is instant juice. I think every goal at Ridley is a little special. I think there's a lot of energy there. I think Ryan Eigenbro does a really good job with the,
Don't say nice things.
I think he does. I have to get that plug in there. I do.
No.
But then our fan base, we feel our student body behind us game in, game out. But you're right. When Ryan comes down and it's low to high from 16, it's a bullet, and it's a tough to
fire, man.
yeah, no doubt.
Along those lines, to have a full house or close to a full house back, I got to think that you guys are one of the teams that will benefit as much as just about anybody. I mean, when I sit here and come up with a list, like Syracuse would be on that list,
Right.
the home dome advantage and all that. But you guys are not are very much near the top of that list too of teams that are really going to benefit from having something close to normal this spring.
I wish it was football and you could say, all right, well, it's a 3.5 point advantage to just be at home. But, I do think that part the way that we've played, but also part the fact that our kids are behind us and you feel that atmosphere. Loyola's a difficult place to play. And it really, we love coming out of that tunnel and feeling that energy from our student body. We rely on it, and I think I mentioned in years past that, now the fact that we come out of that locker room and you look up in the stands, and it's not just your student body, it's kids, younger kids from the Baltimore community that are wearing Pat Spencer and hopefully, Aiden Olmstead or Kevin Lindley jerseys, watching us play because it's they're the right type of kids to kind of emulate, but also, kind of the tradition of the program that's really, put ourselves in that position.
Oh, it's very much become an event. There's no question from this community. There's no doubt about it. So do we talk about, Patrick and I were just talking a second ago, in identifying national championship contenders. You guys have all the experience in the world, right? Like that. I've heard that the coach of the program knows a thing or two about winning national championships, right? Like I've heard that over the years.
Yeah.
Do you guys talk? Do you set that standard? Do you say this is what I think this group can be, given everything that you have?
I'll tell you what I tell my team, and that is, there's enough, and that's it. That's all I will tell them. There's enough that if we play the way we can play and we can develop as a team, there's enough that you will put yourself in a position, possibly to play in May. Yeah. That's it. We don't talk about national championships for us right now. It's about Syracuse, and then the best teams that are going to continue to get to May and to get to late May are the teams that worry about the next game on their schedule and don't look ahead. Mm-hmm. And any coach worth their salt is going to tell you that. It's next man up, next game up. I think our guys understand that, again, being a veteran team, that we've got a lot to prove. We haven't won the Patriot League as consistently as we would like to. So, we've got to take care of the schedule first and give ourselves that chance.
All right. Look, Gunkel and I are going to talk about it. Just deal with that. Maybe not on the broadcast, but we're going to talk about it. Like that's the standard. I know there's a group of players that believe that, and that's for sure. Charley Toomey, again, next Saturday, the opener at Maryland, then Johns Hopkins on the road, and then Rutgers at home. So a couple weeks before you get the opportunity to get out to Ridley and see the Greyhounds. But there's a lot to see when you go see them. There is a lot to see this season. Always appreciate you. Thank you for coming over and spending time with us. Of course, Ryan Eigenbrod, I love you. So, it's the way it goes. That's the way it works. Appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us this morning. We'll be talking, of course. Best of luck this season.
Guys, always love being here. Thanks so much.
Charley Toomey with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. We will grab a break. Ryan Moran from UMBC is going to be next up with us. It is their annual College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevenson's joining us in studio here on Glenn Clark Radio.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The latest issue of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special annual Best of issue. On the cover, we celebrate Justin Tucker as our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, honoring his historic on-field achievements, but also the unprecedented relationship he shared with Baltimore. Inside, we recognize the top people, performances, and moments of 2021, including Cedric Mullins' incredible season and the dominance of local Paralympic athletes. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farms stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
Window Depot Baltimore provides the highest quality Pro Via windows, doors, and siding for all budgets. The best is finally affordable. Call them today for a free in-home consultation at 410-941-3499. They also offer Zoom and FaceTime consultations in an effort to practice social distancing. A proud sponsor of the Tyus Bowser Show, you can find out more at WindowDepotBaltimore.com.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a wide range of models and trim lines. You can choose the perfect Toyota to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
If you miss anything, don't forget that you can find whole shows later on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Podcast. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
All right. Ooh, hello. I talk at a bit of a different volume than Charley, so you can bring me down just slightly. I appreciate that. Thank you to Charley Toomey for coming in and hanging out with us again this morning. Appreciate him doing that. And, boy, we are rolling right along here on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. 3 down, 3 to go, as Ryan Moran is going to join us here in just a minute from UMBC. Still to come this morning, we'll chat with John Tillman and also Peter Milliman from Johns Hopkins. Patrick Stevens is with us here on today's program. Don't forget that Underdog Fantasy Football is offering you a match on your first deposit up to $100 when you use the code PRESSBOX. I know there's just one football game remaining this season, but they still have basketball and hockey. And if they ever get around to playing baseball, there will be that option as well with Underdog. And, of course, I guess there's going to be talks again today, Paul. That's the story. The two sides are getting together again today to try to hammer that out. So
yeah, they're meeting again. I mean, Ken Rosenthal and Evan Drellett, who's been on the bat around,
yeah.
They don't have a lot of confidence anything's going to get done today.
Right.
They think that we're still a good bit away, but they even said it's always darkest before the dawn. They use a little Batman reference there,
Hopefully they get things figured out. And if they do, you'll be able to play those contests as well at Underdog Fantasy Football, UnderdogFantasy.com, or download the Underdog app. Next up is UMBC. Patrick, before we chat with Ryan Moran, why don't you give us a thumbnail for you when it comes to the Retrievers?
Well, you look at UMBC last year, they went 8-3 and had a really good season. It's funny, they had the breakout, NCAA tournament appearance a couple years back, pre-pandemic, but they did that with a team that was the 4 seed in the American East.
Kind of unexpected,
unexpected, win a tournament game, still sub 500, but still you would walk away from that feeling pretty good about yourselves. Last year with a heavy America East schedule, they won the regular season, hosted the conference tournament, lost in the semifinals, which was obviously disappointing. But, they were still fairly young last year, and defensively they were a stout bunch against a league that has some good pieces. You look at that Stony Brook attack, that's one that stands out for sure. Albany, sort of by default, is going to be able to score. Vermont took a ton of shots last year, and so UMBC was kind of the sort of defensive response in a lot of ways in that conference. And so I really like what they have at the defensive end. I think ultimately when you kind of look at their offensive personnel, they had a couple really good pieces, and they were better than what they had been. Do they take that next step this season, and can they kind of emerge from that? When you were trying to differentiate UMBC, Stony Brook, Vermont, Albany, it was kind of hard.
Sure,
I mean, those were all basically 15 to 25, top 15 to 25 teams. You throw the Ivy League back in there, and then they're probably more like 18 to 28 this season. So can they emerge from that? I don't know if there really is a true favorite in that conference, Vermont being the defending champs in the tournament, but UMBC's got as good a shot as anybody, I think, in that conference of being able to make it into May.
And their schedule not so overwhelming this year as they get back to non-conference play, but they're not playing some of the the big dogs they've played in the past in non-conference play.
No, and they get underway a little later too.
Yep.
They later than most of the teams we're talking about. They play a Drexel team that won the CAA tournament last season, and then go to Mount St. Mary's in Towson, host Utah, go to Richmond, and then it's on to America East play the rest of the way. So that there are some tricky games there. Certainly going there's beaten Drexel, Towson, Richmond, not gimmies. And Utah's a team that obviously recruited fairly well as they got underway up there. Onto a new coach now, Andrew McMinn, hired away from Robert Morris. So it's not like there's a lot of chippies, and it's not exactly easy all the time to go up to the mountain play on a very cold afternoon, probably. When they're playing in February up there. So not exactly any place to hide, but at the same time, it's not impossible to imagine them getting off to a 4-1 start.
Sure,
or something
feeling
like that.
pretty good about themselves.
Feeling pretty good about themselves. And I say that plus or minus. I mean, they could be 5-0. There's no reason why they couldn't win all those games, but there are 3 road games in there too.
Right.
So it's a little tricky. But I think that they're in a position to kind of build off of that and maybe get back to the tournament this year.
All right, that's Patrick Stevens' thumbnail. Now let's find out from the man what he thinks about his team. Joining us, of course, the head coach of the Retrievers. It's good to have Ryan Moran back on the show with us. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you as always. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
It's great to talk to you, Ryan. We were just talking, Patrick and I, about the season that you had a year ago, and there was so much good that happened, and then unfortunately you guys fall in the semifinals of the tournament. How much has that fueled your group this offseason, knowing how good you were, knowing, the opportunity that's in front of you to make sure something like that doesn't happen again this year?
We haven't really addressed it or talked about it too much, but I know it's kind of on the guy's mind that maybe we left some plays on the field that day. But we try not to define ourselves by just one game. It was a really successful season. Clearly didn't end the way we thought it could have. But I wouldn't. It's definitely motivating us in the sense of, hey, we know where we are and where we've been standing within our conference, and every year we're looking to be competitive and hopefully win that conference.
When you look at what you have back, particularly at the defensive end, I got to think you feel pretty solid about where things stand back there. Gave up a little more than 9 goals a game last season. Tommy Linger did in the cage. But in general, how would you kind of size up how things look on the defensive end? And do you feel like that's going to be a strength of yours again this season?
Yeah, definitely. Certainly starting with Tommy. I mean, we got a goalie who's been starting for 5 years for us now. So he's very experienced, which is great. We love him being back there. And then, defensively, we have returning, everyone. But the thing that surprised me the most is just how much more competition there's been and improvement with the guys that maybe didn't play nearly as much last year. So I do think we have a lot of depth and a lot of competition at practice right now. And the guys are doing a great job. So certainly, since I've been here, it's been a source of strength for us, and I don't think this year will be any different.
It was literally going to be my next question, by the way. As Patrick alludes to, you had the sixth ranked scoring defense in the country a year ago, and it's sort of what we've grown to know from UMBC lacrosse. Is it fair to say that's probably the brand of lacrosse that we're going to see again from you guys this season?
Yes and no. I mean, with those guys getting some experience last year, I've been really happy with our rope unit, with our long poles, our short sticks. They've been, been able to push the ball a little bit more in practice, and even in some of our scrimmage. I mean, in some inter-squad scrimmages. So that's one area where we're hoping maybe to generate a little bit more offense off of some early offense and some transition, because we got some pretty athletic kids in the middle of the field right there. And if you can get a goalie like we have making some clean saves, that's the easiest way to kind of generate some of those opportunities.
Wanted to ask about somebody on that rope unit, Mason Edwards, the short stick, who had 35 ground balls for you, caused 10 turnovers, I believe it was last season, and is a preseason all-conference guy. I mean, how much of an impact has he been able to have on your program, even if the numbers that most people are going to look at, a goal and 3 assists, may not jump off the page? It seems to me he's one of your more valuable players.
Yeah, I mean, his value is just day-to-day because, he's going to come to practice with energy and with, elite level of effort, and kind of sets a standard and sets a tone in terms of trying to challenge other people to match that. So for as much as he does for us on the field, getting ground balls, causing turnovers, clearing, doing the dirty work that you just alluded to that don't really show up on the stat line, from a value standpoint, it's every day we see the value that he brings to our program.
He is UMBC coach Ryan Moran, and he's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio for our annual College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, on the offensive end, you bring back your top 2 scorers from a year ago. I know Ryan's gone, but is there a next level that you think a Nick Dupuy, a Brandon Galloway could maybe take this team to, given what we've already seen from them so far?
I hope so. Right now, really, it's just starting with, anything and offensively, starting with some consistency. And that's what we're looking for out of those guys, to be able to show up day in and day out at practice and give maximum effort, which they're doing. But being able to continue to do that is really important. And I do believe both of those players possess the talent and the ability to take that next step and that next level. And we're challenging them daily to be able to do that.
Alex Poma is a guy that basically from the moment he showed up had a pretty big role for you guys in the face-off game. What sort of improvement have you seen from him over last season? Obviously, a first full season playing for you guys, I think at 47.2% a year ago. What's the sort of improvement you've seen, and how much of an impact does he have, you think, on this season?
Well, last year was a little bit difficult for all the face-off guys, rules changing, going to 2 feet, reverse wrist. I thought 47%, just shy under 50. If we can get them over 50, that'd be great. I've been impressed with, the other face-off guys as well. Dane Armstrong's been doing a great job, Zach Dudley as well. And those three together, are really what's going to make each other better. But, we expect Alex to improve those numbers for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit more of a face-off by committee, because we do have some talented guys at the X right now.
When you look at the league right now, it seemed like last year, and we were talking about this before you got on here, it was a jumble kind of, Vermont, Stony Brook, you guys, Albany as well. It seemed like there was somebody that you throw those teams out there, and you could have played that tournament pretty much 10 times and gotten a lot of different outcomes. Do you see it being similar this year, highly competitive, and really maybe a bit of guesswork trying to figure out who's ultimately going to emerge from that?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's still going to be competitive. I'd be remiss if we didn't throw Binghamton in there as well. Binghamton ended up finishing the season really strong. So, again, there's no handouts. I do think what's unique about our league, if you watch it historically, is just some teams match up better against others. Like we've kind of struggled a little bit more against Albany, but have found success versus Vermont and Stony Brook in the last years. So, but on any given day, we have two overtime games at Stony Brook last year, a 2-point game versus Vermont, 2 one-goal games versus Albany. So, again, it's like you just said, you probably could play that out 10 different times and have a different winner each time. And that's what makes our league really fun and exciting to be in right now.
He is Ryan Moran from UMBC. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. The season gets underway on February 19th when they host Drexel. And Ryan, Patrick reminded me of something before the show today that I had totally forgotten about, which is that one of the things that's different this year is where you're going to be playing your games. As you'll be playing in the soccer stadium while there's some renovations going on to your guys' field. I guess surface-wise, things like that, how different is it going to be for your guys playing over at the soccer park?
I don't think too different. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be thinking about what field they're playing on when they're in the middle of the game. The soccer park got renovated 2 years ago too, so it's a great facility. It's Bermuda grass. It's probably going to be a similar track to that of field turf anyway. Okay. But I think a change in location will be kind of exciting for our guys. We've been to a lot of soccer games over there. It's really cool, unique environment. So I'm excited about going in there for a year, but I'm also really excited about all the renovations that are being done on the stadium as well.
And that's what I wanted to go to next, Ryan, is what does that mean for your program that you guys are finally getting this stuff done now? And when you guys get back to UMBC Stadium, how's it going to be different moving forward?
Well, the university's, I think, certainly done a great job of investing in athletics, especially the last 6 years, renovating our activities, building, creating, the Chesapeake Arena right now that we have, and then obviously this final phase of the stadium renovation. So, all great things for the guys and the current student athletes that are here, but also it helps a lot with recruiting as well, being able to take kids on campus and see all these new facilities that have been built up.
Was putting the schedule together this year, did it have something to do with where you're playing the games, like games that we don't see that maybe we're used to? Can you tell me a little bit, take me through putting together this year's schedule?
I think most coaches will probably give a similar answer to this with COVID and then only going to conference schedules and then taking a year off from your non-league. It was kind of a little bit of a disaster, but we made out pretty well. Adding Drexel, who won the CAA last year, we were able to get Richmond back on, who's historically been extremely competitive in the SoCon. Getting Towson back on the schedule was great. So again, just looking to schedule teams that have been highly successful in the conferences that they're in. That's kind of been my mindset with scheduling out of the conference, and we're able to, put some definitely quality opponents on there. But it was a little bit more difficult than most years.
Had you hoped to get even one more game on there? I'm kind of looking at, I think it was 5 non-conference games, maybe 6. Was there an extra spot that you were hoping to fill in, or is it just kind of, like you said, enough of a scramble there that you just kind of took what you could get?
Well, I forgot to add in the added bonus of Hartford.
Right.
Yeah. So that opened up another weekend that I had not anticipated, and we didn't get that message until about September. Mm-hmm. So it was a little chaotic. I would probably like to have one midweek game added in there, which I tried, but just wasn't able to do it. So hopefully moving forward, if there's another local opponent nearby, we can kind of add to a midweek and get one more game would be nice.
Well, Ryan, I can see if my son's 7-year-old team is available for the week if you need. He's been trying in goal a little bit. It's been a mess. It's been a struggle, but I can see if they might be available for like a Wednesday if you need at some point during the course of this season. Hey, Ryan, that being said, the normalcy of playing non-conference games, and again, I know we're knocking on wood, and of course, hoping that everything goes right, but the benefit of maybe a normal off season and some of the things that you've been able to do that maybe you hadn't been able to do going into last season. Have you felt any of that coming into this year?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit. Things are getting better. Last year was certainly unique, and it was very challenging on the guys, on the athletes, all athletes, for all sports. And it's been a lot better this year, and I think the guys appreciate it obviously a little bit more, not having to do all the testing all the time, and being able to play out of the conference and not have to play conference teams multiple times. So, I know from my standpoint, I'm excited for it, and I'm sure the guys on the team are as well.
All right, he is. Oh, and just because I've been asking a few guys about it, the shot clock reset rule change, I'm guessing not all that significant. Maybe because you guys play a little bit more deliberately. Is there a way that you think it's going to prove to be significant this season?
I like the change. I think it's probably needed. I don't know how much impact it's really going to have overall.
Right.
So I think it's just it's not going to impact us too much. I can tell you that. And it hasn't in practice. We use our shot clock all the time, and we reset to 60, and 60 is plenty of time to reset and get things, going. And so I don't think it's going to have that big of an impact.
Yeah, it seems like if you've already been in your offense for 80 seconds, you shouldn't need another 80 in order to get your offense going again. That makes a lot of sense. All right, the home opener and the opener for the season, February 19th against Drexel, 1 o'clock at Retriever Soccer Park. Ryan Moran, always appreciate taking the time for us. Best of luck this season. We'll be checking in as it goes along, and look forward to chatting with you again down the road, all right?
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Coach Ryan Moran from UMBC checking in with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show as they get ready for the start of their season. Patrick Stevens is with us here on this Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. We already kind of talked. So next on the hot seat is going to be John Tillman from Maryland. We already kind of gave the thumbnail for Maryland a little bit earlier on, so we got a dip here for just a couple of minutes. Is there anything, Patrick obviously normally joins us on Tuesdays. We typically talk college basketball around this time of year. For a second, it looked like Maryland was going to be interesting there again, and then that kind of came crashing down.
Yeah, the game the other day, I'm even blanking on who it was.
Indiana,
Indiana on Saturday. The game's just it's amazing how in a season where you're just sort of plodding along, and there's not an end point other than the end point. There's a pretty clearly defined end point, I think, for this team. That the games just kind of slide together, but did not play well against Indiana, and it was largely because they shot very poorly. It was their worst home shooting performance, and it was only a little bit better than the Northwestern, or only a little bit worse than the Northwestern game earlier in the season, but the worst since 2007 against Miami, in a really dreadful game. I can still remember watching that one. So clearly for Maryland, if Eric Ayala and Fats Russell can play well, they have a chance to do some damage against just about anybody. It's a good tandem. But, Indiana was smart. They were playing the pack line. They clogged the lane. That's what you do. And you basically force those guys to make shots like they did at Rutgers, and they couldn't do it. And so, if you're Maryland, you're going to probably expect to see a little bit more of that here as the season continues to unfold. And the schedule obviously is very bearish at this point. Michigan State at home tonight. They go to Ohio State over the weekend. Iowa at home, at Purdue. It's not there's not really a whole lot of places to hide there. And so Maryland 1 game over 500 at the moment. To their credit, you take out that Michigan game, and it's a team that has played hard. They've played hard for Danny Manning. It's not been a lack of willing to compete. It's been an issue of just not being as good as some of the teams that they face. They don't have a Kofi Coburn. So, when they had to face Illinois with Kofi Coburn, it didn't go very well.
Yep.
They don't have a Hunter Dickinson. They don't have a guy like that's really going to change.
Well, Hop played well on Saturday.
Well,
I know
played
he got hurt. Is there an update on?
It was Russell that got.
Oh,
hurt.
it was Russell. That's right.
So
Thank you.
It was Russell that got hurt, and he left with a hand injury. Eric Ayala said yesterday he anticipates Faz playing tonight. Danny Manning did not offer up a whole lot there.
Okay.
And I think one of the things you sit there and look at, like, on the one hand, Russell's a guy that, even going back to his days at Rhode Island, is a guy that plays a little out of control. That's sort of part of who he is. I mean, the speed is essentially his greatest asset, and so there's a little bit of that recklessness that kind of goes into that. However, you look at how they've tightened their rotation. We only saw Ian Martinez resurface. Weird season for him, obviously, and I do kind of wonder for him. He had the concussion that he suffered in that first Northwestern game in early December and missed a game and wasn't back until after Christmas, and he hasn't been the same since. And you have to certainly wonder whether or not the concussion has played a role in that, even if he has been cleared, just because he has not been as explosive as what we saw in bits and pieces early in the season. But he resurfaced after missing 2 games, just as DNP coach's decision. He is he somebody that they can count on to play more than 3 or 4 minutes a game at this point? If Fats Russell doesn't play, you would have to think that he's somebody that probably will. Marcus Dockery would be a guy that might resurface
get a few minutes
into the rotation as well at that stage. So, but I think given Russell's toughness, I mean, let's give the guy credit for playing as reckless as he does. There is a certain level of toughness that's required there, physical toughness and mental toughness. And I tend to think that we'll probably see a fair bit of him tonight. I mean, they basically need him and Ayala to play well to be able to keep things interesting against a very, very good Michigan State team.
And then on the local front, you and I both went to Towson basketball games last week, and we saw very different things. Very different things.
You got to see a great comeback.
Yep.
And Charles Thompson.
Stirring comeback.
Basically the Charles Thompson game. I mean, that's what that goes down at. Was it 22-12 for him?
It was, and he took over every possession in the second half.
And that's really impressive for a guy that over the course of his career has been kind of a complimentary piece.
Yep.
And, I'm sure for him it was a really a special moment for him. And I think for Towson, it's a reminder that they have guys that when needed, they can do stuff like that. Juwan Gray is a guy that could go out and get you 15 on a given night if that's what you need.
Yep.
So they've got those role guys that are able to do those sorts of things. I, on the other hand, got to see a game that was...
You saw a game.
I got this... Well, I got to see...
60% of a game, right?
Yeah, I was going to say approximately 55% of a game.
Yeah.
Not even that, because the parking situation was so bad over there.
My word.
That, I was...
Well, no, they had a huge crowd for the Delaware game.
The 1,300 or 1,500 or something like that.
They announced 2,000 or something like that. Yeah.
Whatever it was, the parking was not good. And so I think I got in there about the 18-minute mark.
Okay.
So I got to see a little less than 20 minutes of basketball. Delaware had a couple guys sprain ankles. One of them had been a guy that had just stepped on somebody else's foot. So that's not
going to happen.
That's going to happen. That's not a court issue. The other one was a little iffy.
It's unreal.
So yes, we can add that to the list of things that we've seen.
Yes, witnessed.
You want to talk about a weird week, okay? Getting to see Army come back from 27 down to beat Navy.
Okay,
Coppin, 26 down
to beat Howard.
To see Maryland go up to Rutgers and just
that's right. You made the trip,
off the floor, and then to see a game suspended like that.
Yeah, kind of covered all of the.
We're dealing with the bingo. We're filling the bingo card up here.
What's the schedule like for you this week as far as games?
This week, tonight, we'll obviously be in College Park.
Yep,
for
Michigan State.
Tomorrow, hopefully, if I get some shipping situations worked right with my new phone, that's I'm actually monitoring the where the UPS truck is.
Oh,
Right
all right.
now, so I'm multitasking here. St. Louis.
When we see Patrick duck out in the middle of our conversation with Peter Milliman, it's because he's got to race back to get his phone.
Yeah, so St. Louis and George Mason tomorrow, and a
Okay.
big game for Kim English's team. Thursday, Georgetown has St. John's on campus in front of a student-only crowd.
Huh.
It's the first time fans will be.
Somebody else did something like that.
Seton Hall did.
Okay.
They played St. John's and they got routed.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then Saturday's a little bit in flux right now, so we'll move to Sunday, Providence and Georgetown.
Okay.
And then Monday, Navy and Lafayette, game down in Annapolis, getting a chance to see the Mids again, and one of the many Patriot League contenders.
And I guess one note before we talk to John Tillman, I guess it's not going to be Bruce Pearl.
It's not going to be Bruce Pearl, but I don't think anybody realistically thought that Maryland was going to throw more money at a coach than Auburn was going to throw at a coach.
Well, I mean, sure, of course not. But I don't know that we knew how much money Auburn was going to throw at the coach either.
Well, Auburn has demonstrated that it will throw a lot of money at people not to coach.
That is a fact. That is a fact. So no, they have locked up Bruce Pearl long term, and so scratch him off the list. Then is, I guess, what we say around these parts. All right, we continue along here on this year's College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens is with us in studio. Joining us now, head coach at the University of Maryland, as they get ready for the season to get underway. They also get in the early start to the season this weekend. He is Coach John Tillman, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you as always. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's great to chat with you as always. How much Ferris State football did you find yourself watching this fall?
A good amount. I actually have some gear in my wardrobe now. So
yeah, right.
Go Bulldogs.
It was obviously very cool to see for Jared. I know the big story that everybody's talking about nationally with you guys is replacing Jared, but the pride in seeing a young man live out a dream like that, knowing how close you have been with his family. And the story of him and what it meant to try to, do something to honor his father. How much did that mean to you to see him have that opportunity?
A lot. That family. I showed up here in the fall of 2010. Obviously I got to know Jim very well and became a guy that I asked a lot of questions to, learned a lot from. In certain ways looked at as a second dad and gave me a lot of advice. And, then you had Jesse was a sophomore and Jake was a junior. So you had a good amount of time there. And it'd been a 9-10 year relationship where, you saw Mr. Bernhardt, almost every week would come to practice on Friday. He'd always ask you if he could come, and we'd always say yes. So he'd watch practice from afar, and then we'd sit and chat with him in the locker room. And it was always great. Seeing Jared at a young age at that point, he came to our camps and getting to know him and just even in the recruiting process, they were very open and honest. They had committed us for lacrosse, but when football seemed to go well, they kind of brought up, hey, if there are certain schools, that are 1A schools that do call, there might be some interest, and we just want to let you know and be honest. And they were very honest with all of that. So everything was first class. You could tell how much football's meant to that family, but also to Jared. So to be able to finally, kind of pursue that and just the way that he did it, he's very strategic. He was very humble. He wasn't worried about going to necessarily a brand school. It was really about just, I have a year to play and I want to make sure I have every opportunity possible to get on the field with no guarantee. And he wasn't asking for a guarantee, but he was pretty strategic. So he went down to D2 and just, kind of worked. And, talking to him, we didn't know he was going to start and really until the week before the game.
With Jared gone, I know when we talked last month, just about, or I guess 2 months ago now, since it is February, just kind of about how things were going to shake out, with Superman leaving the building. There's still a lot of guys that are still around. And Logan Wisnauskas is a guy that I think, had maybe the quietest 71-point season anybody could have possibly imagined last year. Is he the guy you think that will be kind of the centerpiece of this particular offense, or is it probably more fair to say that this is going to be maybe a more balanced approach given the number of veteran guys you have back?
I would say balanced approach, but a lot of Logan influence with and without the ball. Knowing that, Jared was kind of a unique guy in that he came back and he was winning matchups and he was attacking top matchups. And a lot of times if you're going against another team's best defenseman, sometimes it's really hard to win those matchups without maybe getting some leverage from picks and maybe some deception. So knowing that Jared was causing so many problems against top defensemen, it did make other guys' jobs easier because teams had to make a decision, or were they gonna just let Jared go, and he was getting to good spots and was able to finish on a pretty good clip, or were you going to help? And obviously once you help, it opens up things for other guys. I don't think we have anybody that's going to be like that. I'm not sure there's many guys like that in Division I lacrosse. They're hard to come by, but I think we have enough pieces that, that understand what we're trying to do. Are smart players. They can, kind of pick their spots per se. But Logan, you just feel his presence, whether it's getting us organized or he's dodging or, he's moving off ball. And if you don't account for him or you give him looks from the outside or you don't cover him inside, he's going to get opportunities. And that's what's so unique about him is that he can beat in a lot of different ways.
The season gets underway for Maryland this Saturday at noon when they host High Point. Coach John Tillman is with us on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Yeah, Coach, just to that point, what Patrick's saying, there's very few programs in the country that could lose a player like Jared Bernhardt and come back and say, okay, yeah, but I think we're all right. Given how loaded you are, how much talent you have on the field, I would imagine internally there's got to be a supreme amount of confidence in what this group can do, even without having that type of player there.
Well, there's experience and there's potential there. Then it's a matter of, making sure, we reach that potential and also making sure that, we stay detail-oriented. We make sure that, we just don't assume it's going to happen, making sure that we're really pushing and challenging ourselves and, we stay true to who we are and what we need to do. So I think our guys have done a pretty good job of that. I think there's a pride in what these guys do every day and making sure that they live up to their end of the bargain with their teammates and, making sure that, hey, I keep my head up. If I do get a slide, I can move the ball and I'm unselfish, but also without the ball, I'm either clearing space or I'm cutting. I'm an outlet when I need to be. So there's some accountability there to each other that I think the guys have done a good job so far. And, without Jared, hopefully there's going to be a need for, and I know there will be, but guys, ready to step up and wanting to step up and feeling like, hey, I get a little bit more of the ability to drive the car at times, which is pretty cool.
When you look at how last season unfolded, there were a lot of teams that were very aggressive in chasing grad transfers. You kind of had some complementary pieces, Griffin Brown in particular, who had a really good season for you, and Eric Holden this year. Maybe a little bit more aggressive in chasing guys like that, like a Keegan Kahn from Villanova or a Jonathan Donville from Cornell. First off, how much of an impact can you foresee those two guys having, but also just how significant is it for you guys to be as active in the grad transfer segment of the portal as you were this year?
Yeah, I think you're always, I think you owe it to the program to find ways to make the program better and find ways to kind of better put our best foot forward. So when you're looking at those players, you're not just looking at talent, you're looking what else they bring to the table. And when you mentioned Keegan and John, the pretty accomplished players, from what they've done in college lacrosse, but the type of guys they are, and when you start talking to people, just the way they're wired, very determined, very hardworking, very selfless, self-starters. Keegan was a guy we did recruit the first time around. He was a late bloomer, and he just kind of grew late. He became the player that he was in college kind of late in high school, and we kind of waited, and you're trying not to bring in too many, but you also are looking for those gems that maybe did blossom late. And we're waiting, and we just weren't sure. And he decides to do a PG year, and then he goes to Villanova, and have played against him. We were really impressed with him. And not only are those two kids very, good players and good people and very driven players, they're excellent students. So you're bringing in somebody that's just much more than a hired gun. Like, younger players look at those guys and, they're mature, they're disciplined with their approach. They have good daily habits. They take care of school. So now you're hoping that type of mindset rubs off on the younger players, not only for this year, but, those kids take away the things they learn from those role models, and that impacts them over their career. So when we look at that, it's much more than just grabbing a guy that can score goals. You're trying to make sure it's the right fit. They value what we value. And there's got to be, at least in my opinion, if it is a grad transfer, you better think that they can provide something and there's a fit and there's a really good chance that they can earn that playing time. You can't guarantee it because it's not fair to the kids in your roster. But if you bring in a guy and he doesn't play, in my opinion, that creates a really tricky situation because that guy, knowing he could look at a lot of different places, if he's not playing, could be, very disappointed and can become a distraction. So you have to be strategic. You have to do your homework. And we feel like we were very lucky with, Griffin and Eric last year, and we feel very fortunate about the guys we have this year.
Coach John Tillman is with us here in our College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, I get the sense that, like, for example, your fan base was able to move on from the national title game and that sting a little bit easier than they have in the past because you guys won a title a few years back. And I don't know, how it impacts you, but these aren't the same players, right? These aren't guys that can fall back and say, well, hey, we've won a national title, no big deal. How have your players handled the sting of that and that disappointment? Have they used it to fuel them? Hey, we were this close when you get over the hump. Has there been, times where they felt sorry for themselves you've had to deal with? Like, what has that been like, sort of the mental aspect of the sting of losing the title game the way that you guys did a year ago?
I think anytime, and you're seeing it with the NFL right now, I think there's a little bit of all that. I think it's human nature. You have to be tricky, as a coach, because when you come back in August, September, regardless of how the year went, if it went better than expected or worse than expected, or, there was some disappointment or you win that last game, you do have to reset. And you have to be careful, when you lose a game like that. You can use it as motivation, at times, but you got to be careful of, kind of dwelling on that and constantly bringing it up because it is a new year and that opportunity is gone. The game's not coming back. But yeah, you hope that maybe the guys can reflect back on the way they felt and that does drive them at times. But if you use it too much, I do think it can be a little unhealthy. So again, those games, we're seeing it, the last 2 weeks in the NFL, there's so many things that go into winning that last game. There's so many plays. So you're just trying to value, the teaching that you provide and, situational awareness and, remind the guys how important every play is in a game, not just the last one.
For as much attention as your offensive end gets, and rightfully so, it seems like defensively you have a lot of established answers coming back. Obviously, Nick Grill departs, but Matt Rahill is back. Brett Makar is back on the close defense. Logan McNaney back in the cage. I know a guy that you mentioned, to me, Ajax Zapatello was a guy that's emerging and could be a pretty valuable piece of that defense. And a bunch of short sticks like Roman Pugliese and Alex Smith are back as well. How good do you feel about that unit and how those kind of pieces fit together?
Well, you always love experience, just because they've been through it, So I think we all feel more comfort with somebody that you've seen go out there because that they've, gotten some reps under their belt and they're not going to have maybe the first time jitters. But you also realize even though they've been through it, it still goes back to execution, and you've got to be razor sharp down there. You've got to make sure that you're buttoned up. You got to communicate well, and you can't just expect it to happen. So that group is pretty driven. They're guys that, they do their preparation very, very well. Coach Bernhardt does a great job with Coach Kennedy at that end of the field. Jesse being a former Maryland defensive player and a very, very good one, and still one of the better defensemen out there. There's a sense of pride from him that it kind of trickles down to everybody else, and everybody feels that. So I know what he expects Maryland defense to be. It's something that drives him every day. And to have those guys, like a Roman, a Higgins, a Ray Hill, a Makar, that are now either seniors or in their fifth year, like they know what the expectations are. They know what the standards are. And again, guys that are good role models for a guy like Ajax, that he can watch and look and go, okay, these guys are our best guys. Why? So hopefully those, habits, that mindset does trickle down, because I think Ajax embodies a lot of what those guys were when they were younger. And I think they can see themselves in them. So, in him. So I think there's, like good chemistry down there. Again, every year is different. So you have to remind them we're starting all over again. I really felt like we missed Jake Higgins down the stretch last year. He's just a really tough, gritty, just athletic guy that can, not only play on the ball, but play off the ball, help you in clearing, help you in transition. So we're excited that he's back. We're excited that Roman came back for his fifth year and is getting a master's in finance. So, you have those short stick position and everybody picks on those guys. So to have some guys that have been through that, it does help. And then when you have guys like Ray Hill and Makar that are kind of communicating the defense, you got a lot of good things going, regardless of some of the maybe newer parts around them. And then you complement that with Logan, who now really has a good season. And you could say basically a full season under his belt with last year. And then you add 2 from the 2020 season, he's been around. So again, it gives you a little bit of comfort, especially with different clearing aspects and things like that. Or if a team goes on a run, he can bounce back.
John, we've talked to a lot of coaches today about guys coming back for that bonus year. And I know some of those guys, like a Logan Wisnauskas, were on board with doing that immediately, basically. There's other guys like a Bubba Fairman and an Anthony DeMeo that maybe took their time. How did you kind of deal with those sorts of decisions that played themselves out maybe longer than you would necessarily anticipate into the summer and maybe even into the fall?
Yeah, we, kind of going back to that game, last year emotionally was such a draining year. And again, I'm super proud of our guys, whether, we made the playoffs or not, or, made that last game or lost or won that last game. I look at what the kids went through with daily testing, at 8 a.m. every morning and, bubbling up and kind of separating themselves from friends and family and really bunkering in and making a lot of sacrifices. I was really proud of what those guys, did last year because there were a lot of challenging choices where, guys, it would have been easy to say, hey, it's Saturday night, I want to go see my friends and family. And guys were, just kind of bunkering in and trying to, stay healthy and not, obviously get COVID and spread it to the team, things like that. So I think for us at the end, guys were drained. They gave all they could, and that's why I'm so proud of them. So with guys with the extra year, what I've found is that you really have to want to come back for that fifth year for all the right reasons. And that's sometimes not an easy choice. And, you're exhausted from the last 4 years. There's a lot of things to think about. There's financial implications. Do you put your life on hold? What type of degree are you going to get? So there's a lot that the guys and their families have to decide to do, but you just don't want them to come back for a victory tour. So you got to give the guys the time. At least that's my feeling on it. So, we didn't know what Bubba was going to do till the end of the summer. And I felt like we owed him that. And that's where I felt like, John Donville and Keegan Kahn became important because we just didn't know what was going to happen with Anthony and Bubba. And we just couldn't wait and find out that maybe we weren't going to get those guys back, especially when we had an opportunity just to bring in, again, some great student athletes, some experienced guys, some high character guys. So we felt like we were going to protect ourselves and just some experience down there. So we did that. And we were excited to hear that Bubba wanted to come back. And then Anthony was a guy that, took a little bit longer. He spent a lot of the fall out in California. And then he decided to come back, and we're thrilled to have him back. So to me, it just showed like you just needed to have some patience. And, you truly do as teachers, you want what's best for the guys, not what's best for me, what's best for them. And putting pressure on them and playing any of those games, like it just wasn't the right thing to do. You just needed to give them some space and time. By having a couple other guys come in, it did protect us so that regardless of what they decided, we just felt like we had a good group coming back.
He is Coach John Tillman. The season gets underway Saturday at noon against High Point. Coach, appreciate taking the time as always. We'll be in touch. Look forward to chatting with you as the year goes on. Good luck.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Coach John Tillman from Maryland checking in with us here on our College Lacrosse Preview Show. How about that non-conference schedule, by the way? It's High Point Saturday, then Loyola, then at Syracuse, then Princeton, then at Notre Dame, then Albany, then a neutral site game against Virginia.
Nowhere to hide there.
Whew. I mean, they're pretty good, so I don't think they'd be looking to hide.
They're not looking to hide.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be looking to hide, but my word, that is a loaded non-conference schedule that Maryland will be playing this season. Appreciate John Tillman taking the time for us. If you haven't picked up the best of issue of Press Box yet, it is available right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box, or read it all, PressBoxOnline.com. Justin Tucker, our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, is on the cover. Again, go pick it up right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms. Well, last but certainly not least today, the final coach that's going to be on our hot seat on our College Lacrosse Preview Show is the head coach of the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. He is Peter Milliman, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you as always. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
Sure, man. Thanks for having me.
It's great to chat with you, Coach. Give me an idea. Obviously, last season was very difficult for everybody, but you guys in particular. However, we saw at the end of the year your group really put things together. How confident are you that what we saw there at the end of last season is what Johns Hopkins lacrosse is going to be now moving forward?
I don't really have any to reference last year. It was challenging some seasons, and we made some good progress. But this is an entirely new team. It's a new group, new dynamic. It's a new season. We'll start back at the beginning. This is nothing about picking up where we left off or anything like that. So, we're just working on getting to know each other and figuring out what works best for us and trying to make as much progress as we can throughout the year.
I imagine that simply having something resembling a normal fall, normal off-season, all of that, had to be of immense value for you guys. How has that kind of unfolded for you, and has that been sort of what you envision a normal off-season being for you guys?
Yeah, I guess it was as close to normal as you're going to get. I mean, there's still some stuff we have to deal with, but not near as much as we had to go through last year. So, it was vital. You can't expect a team to perform to their best if they don't get the opportunity to work together and learn and grow together. And so, we've gotten a lot of great stuff in this fall, a lot of good, team building experiences, a lot of good on-field experience, embracing some challenges, learning about each other. We're getting to the beginning of a season here where we feel like, we've made progress so far this year. And that's maybe one of the biggest differences about having the fall, is that it's hard to feel like you've really made a lot of progress when you haven't had a chance to have a lot of those experiences. So we're getting there, and we're excited for the next challenge.
With that in mind, Coach, and Patrick brought this up earlier with Charley Toomey, it seems like you are one of the programs a little bit more unique, right? And the significance of there being a crowd again and there being an atmosphere at Homewood Field. And I know you kind of really haven't even had the opportunity to taste that yet as the head coach at Johns Hopkins. I get that it's significant for everyone, but do you feel like it might be particularly unique and significant for your program?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. I know it's a unique game day atmosphere around here. It's the best venue in the sport, and we're excited about having some fans and some families back on campus and back at Homewood to experience it with us. So, you're right. I haven't had a lot of it as the head coach here. We had a lot of opportunity to play and to compete, but not a lot to experience the full game day atmosphere that comes with Homewood Field. So, we're looking forward to it. It was nice to get a scrimmage in last week where we had some fans. It was the most fans we've played together in front of in over a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years. So, we're excited to get people back at Homewood.
Offensively, year two in your system for Connor DeSimone and Joey Epstein, seems like those two guys are certainly two of the more established guys you have. Just how comfortable do you feel like they are at this point, and do you feel like they're poised to take a jump from even what they were able to accomplish last season?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's some progress been made, and they're understanding the system a bit more and understanding. A lot of the personnel was new for us last year, and so with new head coach, new offensive coordinator, those things take time. Working on a language and understanding some fundamentals and some basics that we operate by. But again, a lot of the work that's going in the fall and the progress that we've made up till now. Yeah, I'm excited for what they can do. They've got a lot of development still, and they're excited about that. They work very hard. They're definitely going to be two of the guys that lead us this year.
Season gets underway for Johns Hopkins this Saturday as they host Jacksonville at noon at Homewood Field. Peter Milliman is with us here on GCR. Coach, another name that we didn't get to see a year ago. What should we know about Jared Fernandez, the Syracuse transfer who didn't get to play, and how impactful could he be for this team?
Jared's a great young man. Works really hard. He's athletic. He's a tough kid. I'm excited to get him out there. I'm excited to give him an opportunity to compete. He's doing everything he can to be a great and give us an opportunity to be successful. So we'll be excited about Jared when we see him. But it's been a long road for him, so I know it's sometimes it can be tough.
In year one for you, obviously the schedule was made by the conference this year. I'm kind of curious as to how your scheduling philosophy is kind of borne out here. Interested to see a couple of those Friday-Saturday or Friday-Sunday combinations early on. Obviously the Towson Georgetown weekend and later the Navy Delaware weekend. What kind of was your thinking as you went into that, and how do you kind of envision your ideal schedule? Kind of obviously as a mix probably of some traditional rivals, but also sort of how you go about constructing it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to play the best teams in the country. I want Johns Hopkins to have, the toughest schedule. I want, the fans to come to Homewood to see the best contests they can. Friday, Sunday matchups are an opportunity to keep some games off of Tuesday and Wednesday nights, but also an opportunity to present some challenges for the team that may be unique outside of playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, it's really born out of an opportunity to challenge and develop the team the best way we can throughout the year.
As I look at some of the foundations for your team, I would think that you probably have to have a significant amount of confidence in what you're doing at the faceoff dot, and considering how well Matt played, particularly down the stretch last season. And again, we acknowledge it's a different year. I got to imagine that's something that you've got a lot of confidence in going into this season.
I like Matt. I like Matt Naruski a whole lot. We got a good group there. There's some experience. There's some younger guys competing as well. I think when we spend as much time, and Coach Kester is an excellent face-off coach, as we really can, we are going to develop into a pretty competitive group, and I'm excited for what we can do with that position. But we're just at the beginning, so it's new tests this year. Last year we only played 5 other teams, and most of them have the same face-off guy or two the second time around you play him, or even the third time around you play him. So, there's going to be a lot of new challenges to this year, and it's not going to be easy by any stretch. But I do like that group. I think Matt is one of the tougher, guys I've worked with at that position. I'm pretty excited about him.
Similar question, different position. Tim Marseille started 4 games for you down the stretch in the cage. Josh Curson obviously had 9 starts for you. How do you kind of see that goalie situation looking as your opener approaches this weekend?
I mean, as always at any position, we're going to do what's best for the team and what helps us find some success. I think there's been a great competition with those guys this year. Last year we only had 3, and for part of it we only had 2. Competing because we had some injury issues. But now we've had 4 guys consistently, and I think they're really elevating the level and playing off each other. And that competition is going to help us throughout the year. So we're excited for those guys to push to be their best every day and see what we can do on game day to be successful.
All right, it all gets underway this Saturday again at noon at Homewood Field when Johns Hopkins hosts Jacksonville for the season opener, and then, as Patrick alluded to, the weekend following at Towson and at Georgetown before returning home to face Loyola. Coach Peter Milliman, appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning. Look forward to chatting with you as the season goes on. Best of luck all year.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Coach Peter Milliman from Johns Hopkins wrapping up our college lacrosse preview this morning. Last team for us to get a thumbnail on would be Johns Hopkins. For you, what's the thumbnail for the Blue Jays?
Well, first, let me mention the Big Ten just released its preseason poll for men's lacrosse. Maryland picked first, Rutgers, then Hopkins third, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. To close things out. I think even though we kind of brushed aside a little bit there, I think the continuity issue is really important for them. Last year they looked like a team that had a new staff and hadn't had a fall early on. That first half of the season, really even into the 6th, 7th game or so, was rough. They played competitively against Rutgers. Later on, they played a decent game against Ohio State, played great against Maryland at Homewood up until the last 2 minutes, and then obviously played very well in the Big Ten tournament, winning 2 games and very nearly winning a third and finding a way into the NCAA tournament. So I think that it's a Hopkins team that clearly is going to enjoy that extra continuity in both offensively and defensively. I think defensively there's probably a little further to go for them than from where they were last year. But that said, I think that there's opportunities there. We talked about that with the schedule, and Peter Milliman wants to have a lot of high-end games for Hopkins to play, and there's no shortage of those. When you look at this year's schedule, they play Carolina, they play Syracuse, they play Georgetown, they play Navy, they play Delaware, they play Towson, they play a full Big Ten schedule, and I'm probably leaving some. Princeton probably is in there too.
Yeah.
So, Loyola, don't want to forget about them. So there's
actually Princeton is not in there.
Princeton is not in there.
No.
Okay, I must have forgotten somebody from the first weekend of March or something like that. So.
Virginia, Syracuse, Virginia's a pretty, that's noteworthy, right?
So in any case, I think Princeton had been on their schedule for 100 years or something like that before this. So that's only a slight exaggeration, I feel like. But in any case, I think it's a Hopkins team that's better. How much better? It's probably going to take a little while to see. But I also expect that early competition to really help them down the road. And I think, you mentioned Fernandez coming in from Syracuse, somebody that's going to help them out at the defensive end. If they figure out the goalie situation, and like I said, kind of Marcial was a guy that played better for them late last season. I think if that situation is settled, it'll probably settle them down. It's not necessarily the only thing that matters for them, but just a little bit of stability probably helps at that position.
All right. If you're hearing me use the words wind down and you say, that's weird, it's 11:21, why would you be saying those words? It's because you weren't with us. We actually started today's show a bit early. We started at 9 o'clock this morning. So, yes, we are winding down a bit earlier than we typically do. We'll have a normal full show coming up tomorrow. We'll talk more about the Tom Brady thing, I guess. I don't really know what else I have to say about it, but we'll do all that. We are going to wind down for today's show. First of all, I like to play this game, Patrick, with Cassidy now, where I ask her what she learned at the end of today's show, because I want this to be a learning internship. So, and we also have Cassidy fans in the audience. So hand her that microphone if you don't mind. Cassidy, the important question, we put you on the spot. What did you learn today?
I learned a lot about D1 lacrosse.
Okay, but you say that's too broad. You have to tell me something specific that you learned today.
I actually just learned after talking with the head coach at Loyola.
Charley Toomey, yes.
Yeah, when I was speaking with him outside, I literally just learned that they're actually just starting online classes or in-person classes this semester.
Okay.
So the way that their school was running in Baltimore is a lot different than what Stevenson was running their program, and apparently they weren't even allowed to be in their locker rooms. for a while. Which
But
was much
I think we can
different
say
with us.
before we started our conversation with Charley Toomey, we were just sort of having some small talk, and he was like, "Finally back in the locker," and you could sense that was certainly something that he was happy about. So it's good. You enjoyed that. You enjoyed chatting with Charley Toomey this morning. I don't blame you. Charley Toomey is a wonderful person to chat with, so I don't blame you at all. All right, we'll let that pass as something that you learned today. We'll allow that to slide. Remind everybody where you are on social media, Cassidy.
Instagram, Cassidy_Elizabeth22, and then Twitter, CassidyButler5.
All right, very good. Thank you for your help this morning with that as we had Coach Toomey coming in. We got a tidbit? We doing tidbit today? Paul?
We do have a tidbit.
All right, we'll give it a shot. Tidbit of the day is brought to you today by Live Casino and Hotel. Of course, the FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. If you want to be there for the big game, email events@sportsocialmd.com right now to reserve your spot.
All right, the state of Maryland has been represented in the NCAA Lacrosse National Championship game 38 times, winning 13 national titles. No other state has been represented more than 23 times. That's New York, 16 by Syracuse and 7 by Cornell. Which Maryland schools have accounted for the 38 trips, and can you name the number of championships for each school?
Well, that's actually a good question for Patrick. I don't.
Okay, so you're talking 38.
They've been 38 Maryland schools have been in the national championship game in lacrosse.
But you're looking for the total number of appearances for each school.
You don't have to do that. You can just say which.
Well, that's too easy. If we just say which schools, it doesn't.
He definitely wanted the number of championships.
Number of
championships.
per
That's an actual challenge.
So let's start here.
Like I can help you out. Loyola's got one.
Loyola has one in
2012. I can help on that.
That is correct.
And has also been to the Final Four in 1990, 1998, and 2016, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they have also lost a national championship.
He's only specifically got the championship game.
1990 was the championship game lost.
Of course, to Syracuse.
Yes. Towson has played in a national championship game.
They are. They have not won, though.
Not one. No.
Navy played in the national championship game against Syracuse. What year was that?
2004. But they also played in one in the 1970s as well.
That is correct.
75.
They are 0-2 in the national championship.
Maryland has 3 victories in the national championship game in 1973, 75, and 2017.
That is correct. And they've lost the most with 12 losses.
Man. Including last year.
And then Johns Hopkins, if I recall right, the number is 10 for Johns Hopkins.
No.
Is it 9?
It's 9.
It's 9. So it's 1974, 1978, 79, 80, 1984, 85, 87, 2005, and 2007. Not 2007.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it had been since 2007. I felt like I watched them in it every single year, but I couldn't believe it.
They won 2 out of 3, obviously. There. Wow, not bad.
Yeah,
not bad.
They are 9-9 in national championship games. They have the second most losses in the history of the national championship
only
game.
behind.
Syracuse at 10-6 has the best record in the national championship game in lacrosse.
There you go. Doesn't surprise me, by the way, even remotely. Doesn't remotely surprise me that Patrick did that well with that. Not even a little bit.
It was impressive.
All right. A Tubular brought to you by the Stan the Fan Variety Hour. Last night, Stan hosted a baseball roundtable conversation. If you haven't seen it, go to facebook.com/PressBoxSports or PressBoxOnline.com/video, and you can check it out there. Tonight, as Patrick alluded to, Maryland, Michigan State, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Big Ten hoops tonight on the Big Ten Network. Rutgers, Northwestern at 7. Nebraska, Michigan at 9. Wizards, Bucks at 7:30 on TNT. Nets, Suns at 10 on TNT. NBC Sports, Washington Capitals, Penguins at 7. ESPN Plus and Hulu for Panthers, Rangers at 7. Sabres, Golden Knights at 10. And the USA Network for WWE, NXT at 8. The rest of the college hoops you can find at GlennClarkRadio.com. Anything that stands out non-sports-wise?
Some of your favorite shows, Abbott Elementary.
I do enjoy that program.
American Auto and Grand Crew are on tonight at 8 and 8:30. That's really basic.
All right. Everything else, GlennClarkRadio.com. Very good. At Discourse, D1S Course is how you follow Patrick on Twitter. Of course, he'll be at Maryland tonight and hoops and lacrosse for the next couple of months. Patrick, appreciate it as always, my friend. Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us.
Thanks so much for having me, as always.
Again, a normal GCR coming up. Oh, thanks to all of the coaches that joined us today. Joe Amplo from Navy, Shawn Nadelen from Towson, Charley Toomey from Loyola, Ryan Moran from UMBC, John Tillman from Maryland, Peter Milliman from Johns Hopkins will get all of it up in the greatest hits section of the tab at glennclarkradio.com. Tomorrow on the program, speaking of Navy, Diego Fagot is going to join us tomorrow. He is down at the East-West Shrine Bowl this week. And, of course, he had that monster performance to lift them to the win over Army, and hopefully a guy who's working his way towards having an opportunity in the NFL. And stuff and things tomorrow on the show. Anything else we got nailed down?
We have Tyler Dragon. He's going to come on.
Oh, right, okay.
He covered he covers the Bengals and he covered both the.
USA Today NFL writer. Sure. Yeah. All right, very good. Okay, that'll do it. Thanks to everybody at Pressbox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including CCBC, Glory Days Grill, Royal Farms, Exxon Mobil, Grade 8's Memorabilia, Live Casino and Hotel, Underdog Fantasy Football, Duffy's Garage in Baldwin, Window Depot, your local Toyota dealer, and buyatoyota.com, and MyBookie. Thanks to Paul Valley. Follow him on Twitter at Paul Valley III. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday night.